All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Cindy Darling, Mayor of Walnut Creek, and welcome to the Tuesday, March 18th, 2025 regular meeting of the Walnut Creek City Council. The City Council is conducting the meeting from the City Council chambers, and this meeting is being video streamed and can be viewed later or live. I am. You guys not hearing this? I'll just glare over the AV guy. The meeting is being streamed and can be viewed live or later on the city's websites. As some attendees may be participating in their first Walnut Creek City Council meeting, I wanted to welcome everyone and talk briefly about the agenda and the public comment process. For each agenda item, there will be an opportunity for public comment on the item. Thus, if you desire to speak on an item that is on the agenda this evening, please hold your comments until the council considers that item. Additionally, we have a section on the agenda titled Public Communication, which is for public comments on items not on the agenda. Any comments during public communications should not relate to an item that's on the agenda this evening. And consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be initially allocated for public communication for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the meeting if necessary. And if you sorry, I just got back from vacation. My brain is still functional. If you desire to provide a public comment, please complete a speaker identification card and line up behind the lectern at the appropriate time. Wait your turn, and then when you approach the lectern, state your name and city of residence, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the council. Now, please keep in mind that this is a city business meeting. The City Council has adopted rules of decorum to ensure that the meetings are conducted efficiently and effectively, and that all members of the public have a full, fair, and equal opportunity to be heard. The City Council Handbook outlines decorum expected in the council chambers and can be found on our website. All remarks should be addressed to the City Council. Please do not use threatening, profane, or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the council meeting. Again, everybody's going to have their 2 minutes to make their remarks. Written comments have been submitted that were submitted and received up to 2 hours before the meeting have been posted to the city's website for public review and are included in the meeting record, but will not be read separately into the record. So that's the disclaimer part. And with that, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City Clerk Martinez, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Devaney. Here. Councilmember Francois.
Hi, Mike. There you go. Here. All right.
Councilmember Francois.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Here.
Mayor Darling.
Here. Okay, next on the agenda is a proclamation declaring March 31st as International Transgender Day of Visibility. And this is one that I wanted to make sure we had this year. International Transgender Day of Visibility was founded in 2009, and it's celebrated as a way to celebrate the accomplishments and the victories of transgender and gender nonconforming people while raising awareness of the work that is still needed to address the discrimination they face and basically save transgender lives. And I think that's something that we all support here on the council. We all want to make sure Walnut Creek is a place where everybody feels welcome and everybody can see themselves in our city and feel safe and comfortable and can prosper here. So I see we have a very large contingent here from the Rossmore LGBTQ Plus Alliance, and I'm going to invite Alex Baccaro to come up and help me with this proclamation. Thank you. Oh, who's doing the picture?
Oh, somebody doing a picture?
I forgot to tell Matt that he's going to get a picture.
Oh, behind us, they're all doing.
Oh, they're doing their picture. Okay, we're well done. Don't worry about it, Charles. Anyway, I just wanted to present this to you guys, and thank you for all the work you do out at Rossmore and for everything you do for our community. And if you wanted to say a couple words.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm really honored to be here. My name is Alex Beccaro, and I am a proud transgender man. I'm 69 years old, and I came out as transgender at the age of 65. And I lived my life as a lesbian since I was in my 20s. I asked a friend of mine to come today. This is Sue Garrigas. And the reason I asked Sue is because she was married for 55 years to another proud transgender man. They started their life together as a lesbian couple, but in 1981 he transitioned, which was very early. And she brought his picture because unfortunately John can't be here today because he passed away 6 weeks ago. And he was a really wonderful guy. Their relationship says so much about love and commitment to one another, as do so many of the lives of transgender people across this country, across this world, and of course, all of our LGBT brothers and sisters. And I would like to accept this not just for me, but for John and me, and for all transgender people in this world, and for all of the LGBT people in the Rossmore community. And we have several allies that are here that came to celebrate this day, and I'd like you all to stand up and be recognized. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for everybody coming out today. Does anybody else want to weigh in on this one? I think we're good. Thank you guys so much, and thank you for everything that you do out at Rossmore.
And I think we're going to excuse ourselves.
You may excuse yourself. There's a nice cocktail down the road. Thank you so much. No, you may not. You must stay here. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to pull any item for discussion? Oops.
We have another presentation item. Mayor.
I am so sorry.
Still in Fiji time.
I'm still on Fiji time. Okay, where are we? Bottom of the front page. Presentation, city communications update. I've got it now.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Dan Buckshite, City Manager, and I'll introduce this item and invite Liz Payne up here in just a moment. But as you noted, we have a presentation about the city's communication program and activities. We have a fairly extensive program in place in which we try to keep a strong connection with all of our residents and visitors. As you know, Betsy Burkhart oversees our communications program, which includes the quarterly In a Nutshell, a hard copy publication that is mailed out, electronic newsletters, multiple newsletters on a variety of topics, and also works with the media who cover Walnut Creek, and she deals a lot with resident inquiries as well. I think you're all very familiar with, our two other members of our team, one being Matt Bollender, who is behind the magic door there, who keeps this meetings as well as many of our video productions going. And we have Liz Payne, who, come on up, Liz, and have you take over here in just a second, who manages many of our digital services and digital activities. She also oversees our social media and website, and she's here to share what we've been up to really over the last couple of years, as there's been a significant focus on digital services since the pandemic, since more folks are accessing services remotely. With that, welcome, Liz, and take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan, for the introduction. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the community and staff. I'm Liz Payne, the city's Digital Services Manager. And as Dan mentioned, I help oversee the city's websites, main city social media channels, and help with outreach campaigns. And today I'm here to give you an update on the 2024 website redesign 1 year later, talk about how our approach to digital services has evolved, and share some exciting initiatives that we have for the future. And let's see, yep, okay. And give me just a second to bring up our slides right here. Here we go. All right. Traditionally, the city's communications has focused on informing and engaging residents through updates. But today, residents expect more access to services and information online at any time. In response, we've enhanced our websites to help residents find what they need and complete tasks more efficiently. And we've also prioritized customer feedback to continuously improve outreach and the customer experience. One of our core responsibilities is ensuring that customers stay informed. For digital communications, we achieve this by meeting them where they are, their email and social media. The city maintains a strong newsletter distribution list, allowing customers to subscribe to the updates that they choose. This may include the city manager's update, meeting agendas, and project-specific updates. The city has over 24,000 subscribers who annually open over 126,000 emails, demonstrating a strong community engagement to our updates. Our social media presence continues to expand. This slide shows our platforms ranked by their growth rate. Instagram and YouTube are leading the way with a 17% growth annually. It's reflecting a strong trend towards video content. And thanks to the creativity of our social media teams across police, city, and arts and rec, we're seeing short-form video content making a significant impact. Individual videos are sometimes reaching organically audiences of up to 50 or 100,000 viewers. And that's covering content, everything from public safety to city events to public art. Collectively, the city's social media channels have over 194,000 followers, and they show active engagement across all the channels, accumulating with over 3,000 views per year. But we're doing more than just keeping our residents and customers informed. We're creating an online presence that empowers customers with tools they need to access services and information effectively. With that goal in mind, in 2024, we set out to redesign 4 of the city's key websites. This included the main city website, police, arts and rec, and economic development. When we started, as you can see here, each site had a slightly different user experience. This sometimes led to a disconnected and inconsistent journeys for our customers. While the sites were performing adequately, there was room for improvement in usability and reliability of the content. This slide shows major benchmarks from our Site Improve analytics platform. Quality assurance refers to the accuracy of our content. The accessibility score reflects how accessible the design of the website is for audiences of diverse needs. And SEO reflects how well the content is being ranked in search engines. For the redesign, we took a customer-centered and data-driven approach. We looked at content analytics, we did user testing, we looked at user journeys to tell us how and what paths our customers were taking to find their content, and then finally we spoke to staff to ask them, how are the sites working for you, and what are you hearing directly from our customers? The goal was to create a more intuitive experience across all our sites. And in 2024, we launched our 4 redesigned sites, built with customers in mind to deliver a more cohesive and customer-friendly experience. So improvements that were made to all our sites included a streamlined navigation. We surfaced the most commonly requested tasks as call to action buttons on our front page. And we also added an accessibility and expanded translation widget to make our content more accessible to all users. And we also work to simplify the content on the interior of the site to make government information easier to understand. This is one example from our housing division. And after simplifying their content and increasing their search engine optimization, the housing division saw a 38% increase in visitors accessing information and services for housing. We also streamlined the customer experience by replacing PDFs with online forms. For more complex processes, such as Community Development's ADU rebate program, we implemented automated notifications that keep customers informed about every step of the process. Also, staff now has access to a centralized database that helps them track every step rather than manually entering information into spreadsheets. The impact of these improvements has been significant. After 1 year after the redesign, website traffic has increased by 26%. Today, the total reach of all city websites averages 2.7 million views a year. More people are engaging in our services, and they're finding what they need more efficiently. Our work doesn't stop here. We continue to innovate and improve to meet the evolving needs of our customers. And coming up next, we're looking to continue to enhance the mobile experience. 2 out of 3 of our visitors are coming to our sites on their mobile devices. And we're going to be expanding the use of online forms to make our interactions more seamless. We've also launched a digital accessibility initiative with a focus on making reports and PDFs more accessible to screen readers so that everybody can access the information they need. And information technology will be implementing a chatbot. This will help improve response times and enhance customer support. A year after the redesign, I'm happy to report that our commitment to continuous improvement has paid off. The numbers at the top show where we started, and the numbers below reflect where we are now. The circles with the check marks note the government benchmark scores, which you can see that we're exceeding in all 3 categories. Our work in digital services is more than just about numbers. It's about informing, empowering, and improving the way we connect with our community. As we move forward, our focus remains on innovation, inclusivity, and customer service design. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Excellent. And looks like you guys have done some great work this year. Questions on the part of the council? Craig?
Yeah.
Councilmember DeFinney?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. That was very informative. I was wondering, I noticed that with the redesign, the quality assurance went from 79 to 97. What do you, because you described that as being the factual content of the site. What during the process led to such I think, am I correct in that? What led to such an improvement in that category? That's really impressive to go that far.
Well, one of the main things that the analytics measures for quality assurance is links on the site. So verifying that information is linking correctly.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so what we have in place now is we're able to much more closely monitor that, and our teams are updating regularly. So that is improving the experience and accuracy of what people are reading.
So it's the accuracy of what they're reading and where they're being directed to. It wasn't necessarily the accuracy of the content prior.
Correct. It's
Gotcha.
more ensuring that where they're being directed to. And then, of course, our content contributors are reviewing the content regularly to make sure that that is accurate and up to date.
Other questions? Councilmember Silva?
Thank you very much. And the numbers are truly impressive. And having run a couple of websites with thousands of pages, it's really hard to keep those linkages and that content accurate and pointing in the right direction. So bravo, that is excellent. What's next?
Well, I think next is our commitment to expanding accessibility. And really also looking, as I mentioned, finding those tools where we can sort of automate self-service. So the chatbot will hopefully it's another way of people being able to search. Hopefully, it'll help people find content that they want more easily. It'll also be another tool to help staff flag if something needs to be updated. So I think keeping in mind our commitment to accessibility, streamlining the experience for the customer, and giving staff the tools they need to keep the site in good shape.
And congratulations on convincing the subject matter experts that long narrative paragraphs are not necessarily the best way to present information.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for the work on accessibility. I know I'd heard that from one of the, actually, city council candidates a while ago, and she pointed out to me some of the ways that our old website was not as accessible for people who see information in different ways. So I really appreciate the work you guys have done on that accessibility part of the puzzle.
That's great to hear.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for the update. Now, on the consent calendar, does any council member wish to pull an item for discussion or staff?
Yes, please. I would like to pull items 2E and 2F for a comment.
Okay, anybody else?
2C.
2C. And I'm going to pull 2G just because Heather's here, so I wanted to recognize her when we get to that one. So that leaves A, B, D, H, and I. So,
Move to adopt the
well,
consent calendar.
I was going to do the public comment thing
Thank
first.
you.
Is there any public comment on A, B, D, H, or I? This is not the general public comment. This is just on the consent those items on the consent calendar. Sorry for all the confusion. Anyway, seeing no public comment, I will close that and bring it back here for Councilmember Silva to make a motion.
Move to approve consent calendar items 2A, B, D, H, and I.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Mayor Darling.
Aye. All right, we'll go to item 2C, the adoption of the flood control stormwater utility area fee.
Yeah, so I thought this, the information on this program is quite complex, the cost, the funding mechanisms. I think it might warrant, or my suggestion would be to have this on the open agenda, have a presentation from the city on this topic
Okay.
sometime in the future.
Did you have questions today for staff
no
about
questions
this
today,
agenda
no.
item? Okay, the city manager and I will work on this to find an appropriate point. So 2C, any public comment on 2C, stormwater fees? I'll look for a motion.
A motion to approve 2C?
Yeah.
But if we're approving it, that doesn't mean, that means it wouldn't appear on a, I just want to understand what
Okay,
we're doing here.
So I had questions about it, and I brought it to the city manager's attention, and the timeline with the county is such that we should go ahead, in my opinion, and approve it today. But I thought the content was sufficiently complex that we would benefit from hearing about the subject in more detail at some point in the future.
Yes, and I had heard that from the city manager. We will work to find a time in the council calendar where it's appropriate to look at. There's a lot of complexity. There is a lot of complexity to the issue. We don't really have a substantive matter in front of us today, but there will be a lot of work happening. And as that work happens, we will look to bring it back to the council.
Okay.
And so
Well,
we are just,
With that, I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
all right, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
And Mayor Darling.
Aye. Okay, 2E and F. Do you want to do those together?
Yes, I can do them together. Thank you very much, Mayor. 2E is an item where we're accepting the completion of a contract by Public Works on the downtown fiber optic network Phase 2, which was specifically the Civic Park buildings. And then 2F is the acceptance of the contract completion of the 2024 Slurry Seal roadway project. And I just wanted to thank our Public Works staff for doing all of this, what seemingly seems rote work, on time and under budget. Thank you.
All right, anybody else have anything else on 2E and F? With that, would you like, public comments? No? Councilmember Silva, do you want to make the motion?
Move to approve items 2E and F from the consent calendar.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Welk.
Aye.
Mayor Darling.
Aye. And last but not least is 2G, and this is the appointment of Heather Lurvy to take over as the full-time library commission person. I both want to welcome Heather to that full-time position. Thank you for taking up the efforts, and thank Jason Molinari for his work through the years, and welcome you to the commission. And if there's nobody here that wants to publicly comment upon it, I will move that we appoint Heather Lurvy as the city's primary representative on the County Library Commission.
Second. And I just want to thank Heather for her dedicated service, taking the alternate role very seriously and attending all the meetings last year. And at some point, either by email or however, I'd love to get some book recommendations from you for this year.
Mayor Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Welk.
Aye, and thank you very much, and I guess we'll see you at the Authors Gala.
Thank you very much. And now, sorry, I'm working, I'm getting there. Next on the agenda, this is the public communications, and this is the portion of the meeting that is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the council cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. We could request clarification or refer the item to staff. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be allocated at this time for public communications for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the meeting if necessary. So now, those of you that wish to can please step forward to the podium and line up along the wall with your speaker cards in your hand. Once you're up, please introduce yourself, city of residence for the record, and we'll give everybody the 2 minutes for their remarks. And 2 written comments submitted have been posted to the city's website for public review and are included in the meeting record but are not separately read. At this time, I note that the time is 6:27, so we will go for 30 minutes. And I'll welcome our first commenter.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm MD Rose. I'm from Rossmore, Walnut Creek, and I need your help. A deed was recorded, and you will be getting that in a little packet, that changes and clouds the open space boundaries in Rossmore. For almost 50 years, we have had this map, which is a ordinance that has the land use plan. And there's 3 characterizations of that land use. One, down here, it says the clubhouse area. There's regular open space, and there's residential. Within that ordinance, there's very specific language saying you must do this, 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 if you do anything to change those boundaries. Okay? There is an application from Rossmore for pickleball. $4 million, 600 pickleball people, over 9,000 pickleball that are non-pickleball. So these are seniors that have $4 million at stake, and it could be considered elder financial abuse if proper procedures aren't followed. This deed was recorded, and you'll see it in your packet, without a public hearing, with no Brown Act notice. There's another law in your city ordinances that says the city engineer, if he's going to record something and it has significant impact or something along that lines, he needs to go to the planning commission. That did not happen. And no going after the fact, please. We need a public hearing. So our zoning map is in danger. Also in here is you have what's called the general plan, which is super important. And there's a map in there. Our open space is a golf course. Well, we can't climb Lime Ridge, or we can't climb, the other places, but we can use our open space. Uh-oh.
Thank you very much. I will have this staff look at this and be in touch with you if they need additional
Can I
information.
make one more comment?
No,
I'm
I'm sorry.
talking
We
to
have
a-
to stick to our 2
Okay.
minutes. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for listening. And please, somebody help us.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Mayor Darling and City Council members and staff. My name is Ellen Osmondson. I live in Walnut Creek. I came before you last November introducing to you about a Walnut Creek village that I was working on. Today, we have been renamed Mount Diablo Village because there was another project in Baltimore, Ohio with the exact same name, Walnut Creek Village. And because they are established, we didn't want to step on their toes. So Mount Diablo Village, if you look at this chart, it will tell you that it is a table supported by socialization, learning, exercising, and supporting our seniors. This is a nonprofit organization for seniors. And I also want to thank those city council members who have given us the word of encouragement, support, and even attended some of our events in the past. And we are very energized. And back then, all the programs and events were primitive. And now we are getting very close to launching. And we even have a brochure. And so as we continue to launch, and I would be, and maybe, reaching out to all of you to come speak before us about what the city programs are like, because we want our seniors to continue to learn and continue to be engaging members in the community. And so what is a village? A village is part of a nationwide movement of more than 260 other villages in this country. And in the Bay Area alone, there are 30 villages, and Mount Diablo Village is only one of the 30 that we are putting together. And as I said, Mount Diablo Village offers programs that include learning, socializing, exercising, and supporting. And we know in our brains that socialization is a very important component. So we want to continue to develop that.
Thank you, Ellen. Next.
Okay. Hi, my name's Keith Firing.
Probably you're a little bit taller than Ellen, so there you go.
Okay, now start. Okay, my name's Keith Firing, and I have lived in Walnut Creek for 45 years. I had a store downtown Walnut Creek for some of the older people here. It was called Price Right Cheese. I built it up. I sold it. I was an English teacher in the Mount Diablo School District, and I bought my little house in Bancroft Village when I was 37 years old in 1984. Hard to believe, I'm 77 right now. And I and my wife, we love Walnut Creek. I am here following up with Ellen regarding the village movement and what we're working at creating here in Walnut Creek. The same as La Marinda has, Clayton has, Marin has, San Francisco has, Petaluma and other places have. What it is, it's a community of volunteers helping seniors to be able to remain in our homes, which is something that I want to do. And I can't move to a Rossmore into a community like that or do some other things. I am a member of the Walnut Creek Masters Swim Team, the B'nai Tikva, I forget a few other things too, but they're great. But this village provides a support of volunteers, of seniors helping others, let's say younger seniors helping older seniors, and people volunteering to work with each other. And that's what I just hope to make you aware of it, because I want to stay here, and I don't want to have to move into some place. We love living in Bancroft Village. We love Walnut Creek. So nice seeing everyone here, and you as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think it's interesting to hear about the change from Walnut Creek Village to Mount Diablo. If anybody is concerned about confusing names being the same. It's got to be Baltimore, Ohio. So, so I'm sure they appreciate that.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councilmen, members. My name is Jack Dudum, and I'm the property owner of 1515 North Main Street, which is the location of my son and my restaurant at the same address of 1515. I'm here to address the letter we received regarding our patio. We had a 10-year lease given to us by the city of Walnut Creek 18 years ago, and it expired 8 years ago. And we never heard a word concerning a letter that has to do with the charge for the patio. The letter is requesting us to pay $3,600 a year for the use of the patio, which is the only way you get to our front door. Since we need the patio to get to our front door entrance, it also allows us more seating area, which we appreciate the help in our business. We saw fit to enhance it and keep it in good shape. We spent over $200,000 when we had the lease over a 10-year period, and we put cement. We did cement work, fencing, electrical. We did drainage work. We did fireplace, gate enclosure, along with cleaning it daily. The reason we got the lease for 10 years at no charge from the city of Walnut Creek was because we kept it clean. That was the request upon the city. Keep it clean, you have the lease. We recently spent another $50,000 in the patio for furniture, safe, cleaning, updated work done on the fireplace, and this helped during the COVID time. We were given no warning about our previous conversation or notice about the upcoming requirements to have a permit and the expenses to keep on the patio. Our patio was enjoyed by a bunch of customers, and especially for our lunch and our late dinners when people come after a performance at Leisure Theater. 1515 is the only restaurant that serves dinner up to 12 midnight in the city of Walnut Creek, or enjoy watching sports throughout the day. We also have permission to serve alcohol until 1 a.m. inside the restaurants.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dudum. I know this is a difficult issue, and I think we'll expect you to continue to work with
Thank you.
staff on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else at this time? Thought I saw somebody else dressed. Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight, and we'll go ahead and, is there anything that anybody feels inclined to say after that? We will move on then. Next on the agenda is council member and staff announcements, reports on activities or requests, and city attorney, any closed session?
Madam Mayor, no closed session announcements.
Okay. We'll move to the city manager report.
I do not have an update this evening.
You do not. Okay. Then we will go to city council member reports on AB 1234 activities. I think I will start on my right with Mayor Pro Tem
Wilk.
Wilk. I am
You'll
wording.
be back on track, I'm sure. Great, thank you, Mayor. The first is that I now am a liaison to TransPac as well, which is part of the transportation arena. And at our last meeting, we talked about what the TransPac mission was, which is basically moving vehicles along through the 2050 countywide transportation plan. We received a report on safe streets, and recent studies show, and I'm sure that our own transportation, or I should say former transportation engineer would appreciate these as well, but that 23 miles an hour, if there's a collision, means 90% survivable in that collision. At 42 miles an hour, it's a 50% survivable. And at 50 miles an hour, it's only 25%. So the whole idea is what we can do to move traffic efficiently, but also safely. And that is the entire TransPac mission. We also received an update on Street Smart's Diablo Walk and Roll program. Now, we don't have this program in Walnut Creek, but we all were interested in it. It's essentially a school trip reduction initiative designed to promote active transportation among families in Contra Costa County by promoting families to walk, bike, or carpool to school, thereby reducing traffic congestion and improving air quality. So for more information, or if a school or a principal hears this, or a parent-faculty club, please contact the CCTA, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. They would love to get you involved. I also had a tour with the Contra Costa oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting what it's called. Okay, thank you. Animal control tour with Supervisor Ken Carlson, essentially being able to see how the county handles the animals and prepare for adoptions. It's really fascinating. They have so much work with so many of the cities in Contra Costa. It's the second time that I've been there over my tenure, and I recommend that if any council member hasn't had a tour of that facility yet, work through Supervisor Carlson's office. They'll set you up with the tours. It's fascinating to hear about. And just for those interested, Joybound, formerly ARF here, they get the first pick of the cats and dogs that are up for adoption. So they go first, but the county still does a lot of adoptions. So check it out. Go through Supervisor Carlson's office. I also attended the East Bay Leadership Program with Rob Bonta, where we heard him speak about having a special hate crimes unit within the state. I certainly was interested to hear that for throughout all local areas in the state. He talked about also having the state having its own retail crime task force, which our chief may be familiar with, to help local jurisdictions combat the organized retail thefts that have occurred in communities. So he was very proactive in discussing this and really wanted to make sure that this got out to all the communities. I attended the Chamber Civic Affairs on the history of Walnut Creek. We had the mayor talking about the future of Walnut Creek. This was the history of Walnut Creek with 3 former elected officials, including 2 mayors and former chairperson. That's on the city website. And last but absolutely not least, I attended the Walnut Creek Employee Recognition event, and that is just terrific to see. We've got just about 300 staff that work in Walnut Creek, keeping everybody not just safe, but enjoying Walnut Creek to work, to live, to play. And we had recognitions from people that celebrated their 5-year, 10-year, 25-year, 30-year anniversary with the city. And I do want to call out specifically Vanessa Sendejas from the Arts and Rec department, who was named the Rosie Cohen Employee of the Year for the city, from all the very deserving nominees. And the building maintenance team, headed by our own Rich Payne, won for Team of the Year. And so what I think is wonderful about Walnut Creek is that everybody expects our buildings and our city to be in great shape. And that's because we have a terrific team that's dedicated to making sure that everybody feels that way. That's not the case in every city. And we hold our team to a high standard. More importantly, they hold their own selves to high standards. And I can validate this by one of the first things that I did when I was first on council in 2016. I went on ride-alongs with several different departments. And what impressed me over and over and over again is everybody from those departments who I talked to, they loved Walnut Creek. They wanted to make sure that Walnut Creek was the best city possible for anybody that lived here or came here to visit. Even a lot of these staff didn't necessarily live in the city. They might have lived nearby. They really were dedicated to making sure Walnut Creek was the best place to live, work, and play. And so thank you to all of our staff, and congratulations to those who were recognized for truly above and beyond as well. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember DeFinney.
Thank you. So I had the pleasure of attending the National League of Cities conference in Washington, D.C. this past week with Councilmember Silva. It was a really great experience. I'll try to just touch on a few of the highlights and some of the issues that we talked about. It was primarily advocacy-oriented, so it was taking issues that are important to the city and advocating for those policies at a national level. We met with a number of our local congressmen and senators. So one of the things that was eye-opening to me was the housing crisis that we talk about here in California really is the number one issue for most cities around the country. I thought perhaps we, with our higher home values, were experiencing something maybe more unique than some other states, but it turns out that's really the number one issue around the country right now. And it was interesting to hear from other city leaders about how they're solving or how they're trying to tackle those problems in their area. For example, someone, representative from Washington State, talked about incentivizing affordable building by waiving property taxes. In Alaska, they're using land trusts. But one of the issues that's come up is with the cuts that are going on right now at the federal government, we may not see the same investment in affordable housing that we've seen in the past from private developers. And part of that is due to the uncertainty of federal funds at this time. And so with that uncertainty, the interest or the appetite for private investors to invest in projects that require funding from so many different areas, we're concerned about that. On the workforce front, it was interesting to hear that the Pell Grants that are passed out to those who are of high academic achievement and high need may be extended to trade schools. On the tech front, we've heard about our fiber optic plans here at the city. There was a discussion about, well, why fiber optic? What about satellite? And we discussed the benefits of fiber in that it's more dependable and over the long term cheaper. The satellites don't have the longest lifespan, need to be replaced, and there's signal degradation that takes place with satellites with increased usage or weather patterns, things like that. So that was interesting discussion. Municipal bonds, another big one. Councilmember Silva brought that up at one of our last meetings. And that's municipal bonds are tax-free. They go back to 1913 during our first tax code. And what they do is they make financing for large-scale projects financially feasible for smaller governments, allowing cities to issue bonds where the profit that those who invest is interest-free or tax-free interest. There's an estimated $3 trillion going into infrastructure projects financed by tax-free municipal bonds by the year 2031, so over these next 6 years. And it was estimated that about 3/4 of the infrastructure in the country has been built by municipal bonds. If the municipal bond tax-free status was revoked, it would save the federal government, it's estimated, about $300 billion over the next 10 years, but it would cost the cities about $820 billion to then borrow and finance that same amount. So that winds up being a $6,500 per person charge for that move. And that would have an immediate impact if we didn't have those that tax-free status to cities around the country, and may even impact our ability to finance projects here in Walnut Creek, and we've got some big projects coming up. So, and then we talked about Medicaid funding. That's also an area of concern. I know as an ER doctor, when we cut Medicaid and we cut poor folks' opportunity to seek medical care in the community through clinics, it does not save the community money. In addition to depriving the poorest among us from accessing medical care, it drives them to the ERs and it drives them into the hospitals, and it actually costs us a lot more to provide the same care. So that was the experience there. It was also great to see the government in work. In addition, I had the pleasure of attending a film that was put on by the Contra Costa JCC, Jewish Community Center, at the Lafayette Library. The film was Blind Spot. It's a documentary about anti-Semitism on college campuses, both before and after the attacks of October 7th. And then they had students there who have had those experiences, and they spoke about what's going on, and it was a very powerful experience. I met with a new business here in town called Behavioral Fitness. It is located over by it's on Ignacio Valley near the hospital. It's run by Dr. Allison Mayo and Nurse Terry Della Montagna. And what they're focusing on is what the NIH describes as the 8 mutually interdependent dimensions of wellness. So physical, intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual, vocational, financial, and environmental. The concept that attention must be given to all of the dimensions, and if we neglect one of those areas, it impacts the others. In addition, yesterday, I was online for a legislative update at the state level. And I want to remind everyone that tomorrow is Taste and Toast downtown. It's being put on, I believe it's a collaboration between our Walnut Creek Education Foundation and the Downtown Association. So that should be a fun event, and I hope that you will all be able to attend. Starts at, I think, 5:30.
Thank you. Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and welcome back. I'm glad you had a nice time on your holiday. Back to work, right? Recycle Smart, which Councilmember Francois and I represent the city on the Recycle Smart board, which handles trash, recycling, and organics reduction. We met on our legislative committee yesterday, and we reviewed 9 bills all designed, these are state of California bills that are proposed to help reduce, reuse, and recycle materials. And the committee made recommendations to the full board, but among the bills that I think universally we can support, so just flag these two, AB 337. This is related to food waste reduction and recovery and edible food, such as what is being provided, the services being provided by White Pony Express in partnership with Recycle Smart. Up to this point in time, it's been unclear that the state has a grant program to help support that work, and it has been unclear if transportation costs and software costs are included. And then this bill, if approved by the legislature and signed by the governor, would clarify that those funds are available. In transportation, if you're going to pick up edible food from restaurants and grocery stores and other establishments around a community, your transportation costs are going to be very high, particularly if the trucks have to be refrigerated, which many of them do. So that's one we might want to lean in and support. Also, Senate Bill 45, and I brought a prop. So in California right now, these plastic bottles are made of one different material from the plastic cap, but both the cap and the bottle are recyclable. The unfortunate thing is we have a tendency to try to recycle the cap separately from the bottle, and these caps end up in the landfill or they end up in storm drains because they float and they don't go through the equipment. So there is a bill proposed in the legislature that would align California's beverage container manufacturing industry to align with what's happening in Europe, wherein the cap is attached to the bottle, so it basically stays with it. I'm not sure if this will go forward. Recycle Smart, the proposal is that Recycle Smart support it, but I will say this, in the meantime, as long as these caps are separated, put the cap back on the bottle before you put it in the recycle bin. I also
If I can just say, I love that idea. I can't believe we haven't done it before, considering that 30, 40 years ago, we had the cans. Remember the old pull tab cans? That was more about waste and just throwing those away. But it's obviously possible to do easily. I can't believe we haven't done it already.
It just is a good excuse to bring a bottle in.
Well, as it may be, I like the idea.
I also visited, we're continuing to a waste characterization study, which is basically we're collecting samples of people's black, green, and blue bins and doing sample studies of what's in which bins and went out to watch it being done. Fortunately, the transfer station is not as smelly as one might think it is, but we'll be looking forward to finding out what are the results and where we can help to communicate, keep the cap on, or how we can help communicate things like that with the public. The webinar yesterday, sponsored by Cal Cities, was about legislative key bills in the legislature, and they went through 60 bills in about an hour, in about 90 minutes, and it was like the speed of light, but I'll give you some highlights. There were about 9 or 10 bills that are before the state legislature related to wildfires in this state, and this is particularly important. They fell into a number of categories. One is CEQA streamlining, where for certain things such as vegetation management, they'd be exempt from CEQA for those types of activities, undergrounding of power lines, things like that. Fire insurance was up there. Disaster response, including the proposal to create a state fund for individual assistance for those homeowners and businesses that experience disasters. The way the federal emergency management system and formulas work across the nation is you have a threshold a minimum threshold you have to meet in a community before you can secure FEMA assistance, and that formula is based on your economic wealth. And so in the state of California, the Southern California, LA Basin, and Silicon Valley drive up the base level and the formula so that small communities like Rio Del, which has about 1,500 people in it, they can lose a third of their housing stock from an earthquake, and there's no assistance from FEMA. They can't declare a natural disaster, a FEMA disaster. So while we work on it at the federal level, this would create an individual assistance program. So I think that's important. In the arts arena, Senate Bill 456, and I did pass this on to the city manager, it turns out that this is related to murals. It turns out that under the construction building code, contractors building regs, so this isn't state regs, it's the builders, a muralist has to have a contractor's license, not a permit, a license, which is an expensive proposition and requires passing a test in order to paint a mural. So art murals are getting shut down, projects across the state. The deadline for letters is March 31. Particularly, we want to emphasize that those murals are not affecting the constructability or the construction integrity. They're just paint over paint. So go figure. Housing Assembly Bill 650 is about it's a reform bill on the RHNA process, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment process. It's being sponsored by Cal Cities. The sponsor carrying the bill is Assemblymember Gina Pappen, longtime supervisor in San Mateo County. And what this, if adopted by the legislature, and we're going to have to probably argue pretty vociferously about this, it would allow cities to start earlier. So basically, it would push the process back so that we have more time to answer and create our housing elements. It would give us credit for a good faith effort. If we're making good faith progress, then we would be protected from penalties. And the third element is that if adopted, it would be requiring the Housing Community and Economic Development Department, or HCD, Housing Community Development Department, to be clear and specific the first try at its feedback and not keep moving the goalposts. And so if we have every city that has an example of watching the goalposts move in the last cycle is asked to provide information on that. And another item that I thought was interesting, this is SB 346. It would require short-term rental platforms to provide information to local government on who in their jurisdiction is on their platform. Currently, that is not required, and it's not necessarily confidential information, but if we had that information, we could then assess whether there is an advantage to actually pushing on a TOT ordinance to expand our TOT base for those who are on short-term rentals. And there's a bit of an urgency across the state because of Olympics, World Cup, and other big activities and events coming soon to a theater near you. And as Councilmember DeVinny mentioned, I also was at the National League of Cities conference. It is really an opportunity every year in March for cities to come together and advocate with one message, not their own individual messages, but one message that is consistent across all cities across the nation. There were 3,000 people at the conference. It was primarily an advocacy conference. I think I'm on the vice chair of the National League of Cities Housing, Community, and Economic Development Policy Committee. And during that meeting, we had a lot of information on housing, but 3 representatives of the Canadian government came in. They flew in from Canada to tell us how tariffs were going to affect housing. And Canada is all about where we get most of our lumber. And so the expectation is that if these tariffs go through and how they work, it could increase the cost to build these houses, the housing we need, significantly. And then they talked about autos, the price of food, pharmaceuticals, and the electricity, the stability of the electrical grid. We also talked about the impact of the loss of tax-exempt muni bonds, and also the impact to our community development block grant funding and what is about to happen. There is a pressure point to basically shutter 85% of the regional and local offices of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is where our information and funds come through as those local agencies. And finally, while we were there, the House did pass the continuing resolution, and the Senate on Friday adopted it. It looks like our funds will stay flat at the 2024 levels, whereas ordinarily they would go up at least by the 3% CPI. I will finally close by saying that evidently, according to the Vice President who came to speak to us on Monday afternoon, the solution to our housing problem, if we can all get behind, is the deportation of 20 million illegal immigrants.
Thank you for that entertaining report. What do you got for me?
Well, Madam Mayor, I am going to look like a slacker in comparison because I was on spring break with my son and his friends skiing in Tahoe last week. But I'm making up for it in the next 2 days. I have 4 city meetings that I will report on at our next council meeting. Thank you for all that you've done representing our city. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I, too, was a slacker. So I have very little to report in the rearview mirror other than I did talk to the TK at Buena Vista. I read to them for Read Across America. And unlike Mayor Pro Tem Wilkes' experience with the 4th graders, they didn't want to ask me questions. They just wanted to tell me what the rules are in TK. And so I know not to spit, not to push in line, and to not jump the line. So that was really useful. 2 things coming up. It is the start of poppy season. I did talk to Supervisor Carlson, and the city and the county have worked together with the neighbors along the Sutherland area to try to modify some of the parking conflicts that we had last year. And so we are hoping that all works, and so people can enjoy the poppies without overwhelming the neighborhood. And then when we approved the stormwater fee today, one of the things in that report that notes it's the community cleanup crew that is a huge part of our ability to meet the standards that we have to on trash collection. And there is a chance to clean up this Saturday morning at 8:30. Come to the park and ride at Red Gear. You don't even need to bring your own picker. There will be vests and pickers, and you too can have that strangely satisfying experience of picking up garbage around Walnut Creek. And that is it for my report. I will have more as Councilmember Francois next time, because I really do have 4 more meetings this week. So next on the agenda is a consideration item titled the approval of assessment report and annual levy of assessments for the downtown Walnut Creek Business Improvement District and downtown Walnut Creek South Business Improvement District for FY 24-25 and setting the public hearings. So I invite the staff to come forward and provide the staff presentation. And I will note that we have received an addendum since the distribution of the agenda report.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor. I'm going to kick things off here. Again, Dan Buckshire, City Manager, and I'm going to kick it off a little unconventionally in that we received an unsolicited email from some visitors to the area just on Friday evening that'll be coming forward into the mayor and council members' inbox. And I thought it was really highlighted Walnut Creek. And the beginning part I'm going to make a little more generic, and then I will read verbatim. It says, my wife and I recently visited the Bay Area, and we were very disturbed by what we saw near the airport in which we flew into and a shopping district in a nearby very large city in which they went shopping, and that they were really taken aback by the amount of crime, the number of vacant stores, and the general conditions of the city. And then I will now read more specifically about their trip here. On the last day of our trip, we visited Fleming's in your city, in Walnut Creek. After our lunch, we walked around shopping and enjoying the sunshine. We were both in shock at how beautiful and safe your city is. It really shows the leadership team you oversee cares about their citizens, business owners, visitors, and workers. Please keep up your great efforts. Walnut Creek is a wonderful town thanks to public servants like you. As you know, it's not very often that we receive unsolicited positive feedback from the community. And while many of us spend a lot of time focusing on ways to make our city better, and we highlight the areas in which we can improve, I think it's important once in a while to take a step back at just how nice Walnut Creek is. And that is a result of not just the work that the city government is doing, but the many partnerships we have with not-for-profits, with other businesses and organizations, one of which is Walnut Creek Downtown, who we're going to hear from tonight. So with that, I would like to introduce our relatively new Economic Development Manager, Mike Neiman, who's going to kick us off. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, City Manager Buckshire. I'm Mike Neiman. I am your Economic Development Manager. Hello, Mayor. Hello, Pro Tem and City Council members. Today we will be talking about the annual assessments for the Business Improvement District. And as you know, our downtown is unique. It really is the heart of the community, and it's ground zero for economic development that starts in the city. There is a unique ecosystem of businesses. We have nearly 700 businesses in downtown. And the city was visionary in 2005 when it was first formed the Business Improvement District, and subsequently in 2010 it formed a South Business Improvement District that I will refer to as BID and SBID. These improvement districts are a common tool for assessments across the state to generate revenue for districts, to do various promotional, marketing, tourism attraction activities that ultimately enhance their performance and the quality of life in communities that they exist in. So it's our downtown, both the Business Improvement District and the South Business Improvement Districts are managed by Walnut Creek Downtown, WCD, which is the city's partner. In 2002, Council authorized an annual increase of 3% to assessments that have been levied since. And the presentation tonight in front of you is of the annual assessment report by WCD, and it's part of the two-step process that requires an annual renewal. The first step today will be to set the public hearing date, which would be on April 1st, and then we will have the April 1st public hearing with the goal that should there be any protests to the assessments that are being levied, we will be sending out the forms tomorrow for these businesses in downtown, and they will have until the council hearing on April 1st to submit their protests. And if there is a threshold of 51% being reached, then there could be some challenges, and historically this has not happened here in Walnut Creek. With this, I would like to introduce Kathy Hemingway, who is the Executive Director of WCD, and she will present the subsequent slides.
Good evening. And thank you very much for the kind words, for kicking it off on a positive note. City Manager Buckshire, I appreciate that. So good evening, Mayor Darling, City Council members, and City staff. I'm Kathy Hemingway, Executive Director with the Walnut Creek Downtown Association. And I'm here this evening to share a recap of the past year, and then also share the year ahead. As we go through the presentation, I just want to share a quick reminder that our fiscal year does run April 1 through March 31, so we have a couple more weeks left in our current fiscal year. Thank you. So the Walnut Creek Downtown Association is comprised of over 680 businesses, and we operate both a nonprofit C6 and C3, newly added C3 organization. And the bid boundary itself encompasses 29 blocks representing those 680 businesses within the downtown district. The new C3 entity, the Community Partnership for Walnut Creek Downtown, joined the organization in 2024. And acting as an advocate for our organization and the downtown businesses, WCD supports these initiatives through beautification projects, special events, marketing efforts, and professional development for our business members. We currently operate 2 board of directors for WCD and the C3. And the new C3 board includes 8 board of directors. And then we also have the same treasurer, Gary Skrull, that is the treasurer for the C3. As we offer consistency, or to offer consistency to the new C3 entity as we bring that online this year. We currently operate with 3 full-time staff members and 3 part-time staff members. We've added a part-time marketing assistant to bring graphic design, weekly newsletters, website, and overall marketing in-house. And our newest employee is an event assistant that will be managing our utility box program, the painted pianos, and the increased calendar of public events. The team manages a variety of boards and committees, variety of committees, as we strive to become a stronger working board and also involve more community volunteers and business members to join those committees and alliances. We've also managed a lot of internal change within our organization to streamline our administrative work by consolidating and elevating some of the software programs we've used. We are slowly moving out of those Excel spreadsheets and moving into the 21st century. So we are excited about the efficiencies that these new programs will bring. Member advocacy is at the core of our efforts, and we're conducting a membership outreach campaign that is new to us this year. We're foregoing a social event that we've had over the last couple of years. Instead, we're focusing on an opportunity to have more touch points with our members. We're creating a packet that will share membership benefits and a new window cling that will have our logo to go on all of our member window business storefronts, and be able to just set up meetings so that we can have some one-on-one conversations. So we're looking forward to a lot of more brand awareness and also opportunities to learn more about our businesses. The vision plan kicked off in 2024 with a facilitator that conducted a SWOT analysis with our executive board committee as well as our WCD staff. And then we're moving into in-person conversations with additional board members as well as surveys for business members, community partners, and residents. So the vision plan itself will provide a 3 to 5 year roadmap for the organization and the downtown district. The downtown construction, we are pleased to say that the Locust Street project is completed. So our team helped assist with Public Works and East Bay Mud and Central Sand by providing access to our businesses, conducting Zoom meetings and e-newsletters and website updates, and then hosted a reception at the end of the project to celebrate that 2-year project. And then on the state and national level, as members of the California Downtown Association and the International Downtown Association, our team participates in conferences and webinars and to develop stronger programs. This last week, 3 of our staff members attended the CDA West Coast Urban District Forum in San Francisco, along with Mike and Cassava from the Economic Development Department. And we joined over 300 executives and bid partners, vendors, and city staff at that conference. And then last spring, attended a couple of lobby days on behalf of the downtown businesses, meeting with our representatives, and a committee session on downtown recovery that is being led by Assemblyman Matt Haney. And then we also had a couple of meetings with Congressman DeSaulnier and Mayor, or at that time Mayor Haskew and Mayor Pro Tem Darling to move around or exactly visit some of the restaurants with Congressman Mark DeSaulnier. Moving into our programs, our summer arts program launched a summer 3-month program in June of '24. We collaborated through the Arts Alliance organization, or Arts Alliance Task Force, with 15 organizations, including the City of Walnut Creek, creating 15 programs and events, and encouraging the culinary and vision and visual and performing arts within the downtown. Those large-scale events brought thousands of people through the downtown, through festivals and concerts and festival cultural, opera and movie nights. So we're looking forward to hosting that again this upcoming summer. Painted Pianos was back for the 6th season. We had over 90 volunteers that were downtown at the on Earth Day, painting those pianos to be able then to for folks to be able to enjoy throughout the downtown. And then our holiday decorations, we were able to expand the program on its 2nd year by adding banners to the Mount Diablo corridor, and then also additional lamppost snowflakes throughout the south bid. The downtown stages, there's 3 that are located within the downtown at the Cypress Mini Plaza, Waterlight Public Plaza, and Plaza Escuela. We coordinated a variety of live entertainment with some of our partners to promote their programs, as well as utilize some of the space for our own events. And then we're excited to move into completing the Big Belly art wrap project that we've been working on with the Public Arts Manager, Bedford Gallery, and Public Works, and Recycle Smart. We selected artists or artwork from 36 artists, then hope to make those installations within this month. So our marketing efforts, this is just a little snapshot of our highlights. Our website itself had over 74,000 visitors, and we're very proud to continue the success of the weekly e-newsletter for our members as well as the public. 50.7% open rate, which is hugely it's a great improvement versus the industry average at 30%. And that proves to be a very important benefit to help promote our businesses, brands, and to our over 6,000 subscribers. And just a little highlight in regards to TikTok. We added TikTok to Walnut Creek Downtown's social media platform through the ice rink this year. We brought in 1.9 million views, mostly around the ice rink. So we are excited to be able to grow that platform itself. Walnut Creek Downtown also assisted with the production of Head West Marketplace on North Main Street. And this was a pilot program that was in response to those businesses requesting more activity on their blocks to increase much needed foot traffic. We're working with Head West and city staff to explore options to bring them back for May, July, September, and December of this year. And then our annual Uncorked event brought 750 visitors to the downtown. We started at Redney Plaza, and guests were able to enjoy and step into 39 businesses throughout the downtown on that particular evening. We continue to have one of our main fundraisers as being this providing beverage service for the Broadway Plaza Summer Concert Series. And our first Wednesday event expanded from one event the previous year to 2, and we also expanded the footprint onto Locust Street with about 3,000 to 5,000 visitors attending each evening. First, and then the holiday tree lighting event continues to grow. This was the 2nd year back after a bit of a hiatus, and we enjoyed hot cocoa and visits from Frosty and friends, and Mayor Darling flipping the switch for the holiday season. And then there was Oktoberfest. We moved into a 2-day event. So we were able to launch an Friday evening program, and then all day on Saturday. Our increase, our guest increase went from 12,500 to over 20,000 attendees this past year. And we were thrilled to be able to accommodate as a very long day, long weekend, but with a lot of many ages and a lot of smiling faces within the East Civic Park. We also featured a new community stage that had a lot of our local entertainers and schools that participated on that stage. And then the Broadway Plaza Parade of Lights. We were able to offer a concession stand and also coordinated the Zamboni from Walnut Creek on Ice to help promote that event. And the 19th season of Walnut Creek on Ice kicked off for a 7.5-week season, 3 weeks longer than the previous year. This year's festive experience featured a 3-lane ice slide sponsored by Mechanics Bank, cozy rinkside fire pits sponsored by Zebra Tattoo and Piercings, which brought 2 additional fire pits, and ice hockey. Our extensive marketing campaign included a digital billboard on coming off of the Bay Bridge on Highway 80. So we were happy to be able to continue to share Walnut Creek with our visitors throughout the region, just through that particular effort. This spreadsheet shows the year-to-date budget, which closes again on March 31st, as well as next year's proposed budget. And in your report, you have the full budget in front of you. This is a consolidated slide of our budget, and also, let's see, just to show the net. I think I'm on my wrong page. I did want to just point out one thing that is on this. I think I'm on the wrong page here, so I'm just going to keep going. There we go. I wanted to point out the administration fee. The costs in that particular line are due to a new interactive website that we'll be launching by the end of this month, increased insurance costs, and then the addition of the Measure O expenditures, which was in 2023, the first year that we received those funds. And then this graph shows our programs, where the net profit loss for each program that we produce. Overall, the majority of our programs are showing a positive. This is the assessment chart for both the bid and the South bid, including the 3% increase that the annual increase that we'll be proposing for this coming year. And then our events schedule for 25 is here with all of the programs, the beautification projects, as well as the special events for the public. And then our initiatives for the year ahead. For the vision plan, we'll continue to work with the facilitator to conduct those focus groups and member survey. And then outdoor dining, we hope to see more outdoor dining within the downtown, focusing on sidewalk dining, the structures, and patio activations. Our team has had extensive meetings with the city staff, architectures, and businesses to review the current guidelines and how we can successfully realize 10 to 12 dining structures within the downtown. So we're hosting, in fact, co-hosting a meeting on Thursday with the city to relaunch the program to the downtown business community. And then the 501c3 will be continuing to focus on marketing the addition of the C3 entity, work with the new board of directors on partnerships, and enhancing the events and programs that it supports. Data is definitely something that we'd like to improve upon. We'll be seeking out software programs to help source data for our programs and events, to provide metrics for our team as they program, as well as the board of directors, business members, and partners. Our volunteers are a very important part of our organization. A concerted effort to develop stronger volunteers is a focus for the year ahead. We hosted a volunteer open house, which had about 80 people show up to be able to learn more about opportunities with Walnut Creek Downtown. And we'll be updating our website. The new platform will seamlessly integrate the current website to a new program featuring a business directory, interactive map, event calendar, merchant spotlight, job postings, blog posts, and more. The new website will be higher performing and will increase the site speed, prioritize the mobile-friendly viewer, and meet accessibility standards. And overall, this program will result in a savings of approximately $10,000 for the marketing and payroll budget items. Budget continues to be obviously a priority. We continue to strive to reduce our expenses through multi-event contracts, partnerships, consolidating software that will streamline our staffing efforts, and continue to pay down our SBA loan secured during the COVID. And advocacy, as I mentioned before, is at the core of what we do. And Walnut Creek Downtown and our team is privileged to work with the downtown business community by aligning our efforts to ensure economic vitality and an engaging and innovative downtown district. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for having me this evening, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you for the partnership for all of Walnut Creek Downtown. We really appreciate your work.
Thank you, Kathy. And with this, you have 4 recommended resolutions for approval. The first 2 are for the annual assessment report that you just heard the presentation of, and one is for the Business Improvement District, and the other one is for the S bid. And the last 2 resolutions are the intention of levy assessments for fiscal year 2026 for the upcoming year, one for the Business Improvement District and one for S bid. This completes our presentation, and we are happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, questions for staff. Councilmember DeFinney.
Thank you for the presentation. I was curious, the vision plan, that's exciting. When do you think that will be completed?
I'm hoping by midsummer at the latest.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing what that vision plan is. And then I just wanted to compliment you, the events. I mean, 550,000+ off of these events, and it looks like the expenses were only around 220. So that's still pretty impressive.
Thank you.
And definitely looking forward to hearing more about the upcoming meetings for outdoor dining and the relaunch. That should be, looking forward to seeing that as well. And also just, looking forward to, in general, collaborating with the downtown community in the future and continuing to. And then,
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. I had a question for Mike. On the proposal, there's a 10% administrative fee that the city charges. Can you just elaborate on what all goes into that and how we arrived at that number?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to, Councilmember DeVinny. So this fee was first established in 2011, and it was meant to be a cost recovery fee to reimburse staff time for the city for things like economic development staff time and collaboration, different departments, legal, others. Some of those services have subsequently shifted from staff to HDL, which is the city's consultant that provides a broader slew of services, but they're now providing some of that service when it comes to annual assessments and things along that nature. They track the list of businesses based on the business license, and the next, and this has been part of the agreement between the city and WCD, which was agreed upon for the 10% charge through 2027.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Francois?
Thanks, Mike. I think my questions are mostly for Kathy.
Hi.
Hey, Kathy. First of all, thank you for all that you and your team do to enliven and enrich our downtown. We heard the compliments of that earlier tonight, so thank you.
Sure.
On the vision plan, following up on Councilmember Davini's question, I know it's still a work in progress, a 3 to 5 year plan. Can you share any of the preliminary findings from the SWOT analysis or what you envision kind of the 3 to 5 year plan might contain?
So it's for both the organization, but then also for the downtown. So I want to just make sure that that it's going to be wrapped up into both of those. Really still in the early stages. I'm going to be very curious to see what our member surveys bring back. We're also going to be offering a survey to residents and visitors. So right now it's a lot of streamlining that we're needing to do, and then also looking at the amount of events that we produce, which are the community events. We often talk about that as some of the events we don't need to actually, make a profit on, but we need to be able to provide that activity to the downtown and for our residents. Holiday tree lighting, comes to mind where, we're getting a couple of hundred people out just for on a rainy day. So lots more to come, but still very much still in the beginning stages of gathering that information.
That's helpful, and I appreciate that. Do you envision it being kind of more of an action plan, kind of looking at the events, maybe adding a marquee event like Oktoberfest or Walnut Creek on Ice?
Yeah, no, and that's the other thing. One of the other major things that we're talking about is we are so event heavy. That does take time away from our advocacy and our membership engagement. So that's something that I personally want to kind of see where can we see that balance. Obviously, the residents and they enjoy having these big events. Sometimes that doesn't always translate over to our businesses. The street closures can be difficult for them, so it's kind of working through some of those and finding out, do we continue to produce 12 to 15 events each year, or and is that really what our membership and our business community needs, or do they need more time from our staff to be able to focus on marketing the downtown and they're supporting them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I imagine that's kind of a fine line and a careful balancing act that you need to do between those two. Are there any new member businesses you want to highlight?
New that are coming online
that are coming online or that have recently opened?
Yes. Well, Model Bakery obviously has been a huge hit. Pinstripes was definitely something that everyone's been looking forward to. We are anxiously awaiting Original Joe's. So we are seeing quite a few in the some of the larger national or regional restaurants coming into the South bid between Original Joe's and Broadway Plaza is continuing to be very successful. They are rotating some of theirs through. Louis Vuitton was a pop-up, and so many people were concerned about that closure, but that was a scheduled closure. But with more retailers coming online, they're at almost like 99% occupied, so they continue to definitely be a strong support for the downtown business community.
That's great. A lot of activity happening, which is great.
Every day.
And then just finally on the summer arts program, are there any, I know there were about 15 programs, events last year. Are some of those being carried forward again this year? Any that you want to highlight that we can look forward to?
Yeah, Festival Cultural is definitely one of the larger ones that will be taking place in June. And I've also heard that the festival opera. We'll be having a full-scale opera in Civic Park, so we're excited to be able to produce that. And then our events, the Lesher Center is full of events every single month that summer, or this upcoming summer. So those are probably just a few highlights, but definitely. And then also, I didn't really mention as much with the First Wednesdays. We have rebranded that particular program to be called the Locust Street Festival. So we will be moving from 2 programs to 4. So May will begin that series, and we're looking forward to activating the full footprint on Locust Street.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. And just so people understand how good Kathy is, when we did the tree lighting, she not only had to get us all there to get it lit, but she had to get it unlit before we could light it because it was already lit. Yeah. And she figured that one out. So that was.
Thank goodness for Mike Vickers and cell phones.
My question really is about the Measure O funding. I know we've had a lot of discussion about the partnership on Measure O, and I see the number is $126,000 for next year. Is that kind of a number that we're moving forward with it on an annual basis, or do we know what we're looking at there?
Yeah, that with Measure O funds, it's a little tricky because it's straddling 2 fiscal years. So in December, we had approval for some of the programs that were actually, we received reimbursements and we received funding for. Some of the other ones are going to be taking place. So for instance, like the ice rink, and then we've got the utility boxes and then Oktoberfest. So some of those fundings will be realized in 25-26 fiscal year.
Okay, that explains
That's
the
the
difference,
difference between the two.
That makes a lot of sense. I was like, why are we cutting that back? But I knew there was a.
No, we have not, nothing has been budgeted beyond what has been approved.
Okay, and then are you looking at your vision plan on what else you might want to do downtown in partnership with the city, or, is that going to be one of the products coming out of the vision plan? Yeah,
I think it's a side conversation to the vision plan. So that's, something more that we're talking about. It will not probably be event related as much as it will be a little bit more programming, maybe outdoor dining, depending on how the conversations go over the next couple of months.
Okay.
But nothing decided yet.
Okay. Any more questions? Councilmember Silva.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the report every year. So if you were only able to say 3 things that have gone really well, that you're really holding on to, and then 3 opportunities or areas where you want to do it differently or better, what would those be?
As far as successes, I would definitely say the continued increase in attendance at our public events and watching Oktoberfest double. So that just speaks to our marketing, hopefully some of our brand awareness and people knowing that they're quality events. And then a strong team that's been around for the last couple of years. Since COVID, we have a team that continues to grow that can produce these events. And then the partnerships that we've developed. We've developed a much stronger partnership over the years with the Chamber of Commerce and with the addition of Visit Walnut Creek. They are our largest sponsor to the tune of $90,000. So we're very grateful for not only their belief in us and their financial support, but also that daily partnership that we have with the Chamber as well as our other community partners. And then as far as challenges or improvements I'd like to see, data, definitely trying to increase just our knowledge and being able to source platforms that can provide those metrics so that we're programming correctly and we're doing, the will of our members. And additional improvements is probably I'd say I'm spending more time with our businesses to be more engaged with them and getting out and actually walking through the downtown more often. We tend to, often get sucked into the computers, and so I'd love to be able to spend as much time as we can. So spending more time with those members and hearing what they have to say. We're out there a lot, but you can always improve to do more.
So I appreciate the comment you made about it could be that your members really would like you less event focused because they do distract. Sometimes there's a lot of people downtown, but they haven't entered any particular, they're very transactional in nature sometimes, and it doesn't seem like they're getting business. But if you had to pivot more to a marketing of downtown, what would that look like in your mind as opposed to marketing Oktoberfest or the ice
Right, right. So we're always talking about, Walnut Creek downtown is a regional destination and beyond. So how can we put that into words and create a marketing plan that, is something that kind of piggybacks off of what Visit Walnut Creek is doing, but more centered to the downtown and showcasing not only our shopping and our dining, but the arts, piggybacking again with the Lesher Center and really being able to tout that we do have this regional arts center within our 29 blocks. And also Broadway Plaza is an amazing partner, and we are fortunate to be able to have a Macerich property within the downtown. But then how can we also showcase the traditional downtown and get folks to walk across the street beyond Mount Diablo and come into the downtown, which then will also drive hopefully interested businesses and economic development overall. So lots of ideas on that one.
Lots of ideas, great. You mentioned that you have an SBA loan from COVID era. Is that the liability that's on the books?
Yeah.
Do you have a prescribed repayment plan, or they didn't forget? Some were forgiven. This one was not.
No, this one was not forgiven. And that is one of our priorities for our budgets initiative this year we've been paying it down, but it's been on a interest that had been accruing. So it is definitely one of our initiatives to pay closer attention to and start ticking away at that. So more to come on that.
And finally, can you explain the 501c3? Is that you got to be careful that you can't mix two types of entities for tax purposes. So how are you keeping what are the funds that you're collecting, and are those the 25,000 in prospective donations that are listed on the books?
Right.
And then what costs can you cover with those charitable contributions?
Right. So we first of all, we opened a separate bank account. We hired a CPA that is dedicated to just working with C3s to help advise us. And then we have shifted all of the events and all of the public-facing events into the C3. So, and then we've also added additional accounting categories so that everything is completely separate as much as possible, as well as getting advisement from some of our partners, including the Chamber and DRAA, who operate the C3, because it is a different entity. But it's not unusual for bids to operate both a C6 and a C3. So it's a little bit of the reason why we have had a slow roll in bringing the C3 online, is just to make sure that we are abiding by the rules and looking at what benefits our donors can receive legally, and making sure that we get that correct. And there was one other thing I was going to say, escapes me now, but those are how we're dealing with the C3 right now. But we're excited about the opportunity.
What is the benefit to the organization if it's about events? How does that?
So
it's different having it operated by a nonprofit versus still a 501, but the C6.
Right. So the C6 is supposed to be all of business-facing, business funds and programs that remain in that bucket. And then the C3 is all public-facing. And so the benefit to being able to create this C3, which has been on the to-do list for the organization for over 15 years, was to be able to enhance those public-facing events and then programs, and then also be able to provide our donors with the benefit, with the tax benefit that they may be seeking. But we've been very fortunate to have the support that we have had over the last 30 years. So we're looking to be able to just kind of enhance what we have with that C3 through sponsorships and donors. And the $25,000 donor or donation line item, that was just something, an amount that we feel that we could attain with the addition of the C3 with the donations.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. And now I will open it up for public comment. Is there any member of the public interested in commenting on this agenda item? No. So I will bring it back up here. We have 4 recommended actions. Do people want to?
I have a question for staff.
You have a question for staff. Well, go
Yes.
ahead and ask that question.
So the question about the bid assessment fee that we take, I was part of the conversation in 2011. Correct me if I'm wrong, and boy, I should have checked. Do we not do the same thing for all of the other bids and P-bids?
Yes, that's correct, Councilmember Silva. We do charge a cost recovery fee. The rates are different, but the spirit and the idea and the justification is the same.
Okay, so this is not abnormal.
Correct.
Thank you, and thank you for making this is your first report to council. And I was cleaning out some files today, and I found those EPS files with your name on the cover.
All right. We're all good on questions. We'll start with Councilmember Silva. Do you have any comments?
I'm just so glad that we've had this great partnership with Walnut Creek Downtown over the years, and I remember distinctly the conversations in 2005 and 2011. COVID could have been the end, but you have helped us keep Walnut Creek, downtown Walnut Creek vibrant and active, and made our community a better place, so thank you. And I can't think of a better organization. It's our choice as to who the representative is, and I can't think of a better organization, so thank you.
Councilmember Francois, any comments?
Yeah, I just want to thank Kathy personally for your leadership of the organization. You mentioned bringing on the 501c3, which was a 15-year effort, and you brought it over the goal line. It kind of reminds me of Measure O, how long that had been lingering, and what a sense of accomplishment that was. So thank you for your leadership there. I know that there are challenges ahead for all of us, and probably most likely for Walnut Creek Downtown on the financial issues with the administrative costs. We'll have that contract coming up in 2 years that we can look at the right size to the extent we need in terms of the percentage for that. And also for outdoor dining, that the relaunch of that program I think is going to be a big deal, and we'll need to be nimble and flexible to make sure that the program is really delivering the results that we want to see through that program, which was so popular during the pandemic. And because of the Locust Street closure, we had to sideline some of the businesses, put it on pause before coming back. So thank you for all you're doing. Keep up the good work. We look forward to the continued partnership.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Kathy. My colleagues have really said it all. I look forward to the events. They're terrific every year. I look forward to being part of them and going to, I think, every one of them like I did this last year. And it's a great partnership. I mean, we heard it from the one letter into the city. People come here, they talk about how great downtown Walnut Creek is and all the events and things like that. And I'm proud to represent Walnut Creek. So thank you so much.
Any comments?
made most of my comments previously, but certainly enjoyed speaking with you and hearing more about what Walnut Creek Downtown is doing and your goals, as well as the other board members. It's just a really great group of folks, as well as being strong business leadership. So we're really looking forward to working with you and being creative and trying to advance the downtown the best that we can.
And my only comment is Walnut Creek Downtown made it to the discussion around the bar in Fiji. And people were like, "Oh, you're the mayor of Walnut Creek. Ooh, that's really cool." So you guys are known far and wide. And with that, I'll go ahead and move to adopt the resolution approving the Walnut Creek Downtown Walnut Creek Business Improvement District Annual Assessment Report for FY 24-26. The resolution approving Downtown Walnut Creek South Business Improvement District Annual Assessment Report for FY 24-26. The resolution of intention to levy assessments for fiscal year 26 for the bid and set in the public hearing for April 1st, 2025, and adopt the resolution of intention to levy the assessments for FY 25-26 for the S bid and set the public hearing for April 1st, 2025.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mayor Darling.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
And Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Okay, and with that, we will take a 10-minute break to come back and finish up our next agenda item. Thank you. All right. And we are back. Next on the agenda is a consideration item titled Adoption of a Resolution Establishing Pension Trust and Reserve Use Policy. And I look for a staff presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Darling, Mayor Pro Tem Wilk, and members of council. Kirsten Lacasse, Administrative Services Director. And tonight we're going to be talking about the pension trust and reserve analysis and proposed use policy. And before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that when we brought our 10-year general fund financial forecast back in January, we talked about the rising pension costs and the budgetary impact on that, and then also talked about bringing a strategy back to your council in order to see what we can do to mitigate those increasing costs. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And as part of this process, we worked in conjunction with NHA advisors. And so we have Mike from NHA here with us tonight, who will also be sharing with you some information about pension. So this evening, we're going to start off by providing some key considerations for you to think about as we're going through the presentation. And then we'll turn it over to the NHA team to talk about the pension program review, including historical and projected CalPERS costs, followed by a cost management strategy overview, which will include the analysis of the Section 115 trust and reserve, as well as some scenarios for consideration as we look at using the pension resources going forward. And then we will bring it back to staff to talk about some takeaways and recommendations, including proposed policy language for your consideration. So what we're asking of you this evening is to provide feedback and accept the report and adopt a resolution establishing the pension trust and reserve use policy. So some of the areas we're asking you to think about as you hear the information this evening from both staff and NHA is, when do we use our pension resources and under what circumstances? How much do we use, which could include whether or not we exhaust the trust entirely, how much we would use annually, and then how long do we want to make it last? What latitude should the policy provide? Keeping in mind some things could change over time, like economic conditions. How can we be mindful of using one-time dollars for ongoing costs and consider using the pension resources as a bridge until costs begin to decrease? And lastly, how do we balance the use of these resources with our other reserves? So in times of economic challenge that could trigger the use of some of our other reserves, how do we manage the pension resources in that context? So next, I'll briefly introduce the team that we worked with throughout this process. So Mike Myers, who's the vice president and also the pension group manager, is here with us this evening. Craig Hill is a managing principal, and their analysts, Matt DePhillips and Adrian Gonzalez. And now I will turn it over to Mike for the next portion of our presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Darling, honorable council members, Mike Meyer with NHA. As Kirsten mentioned, we had a large team working on this project. Craig Hill's been working with the city for, I think, 15 years now on various capital funding projects. I run our fiscal sustainability and pension group, so that's why I'm here speaking tonight. This is the same slide deck that we presented to Finance Committee. Just want to make that known. There was no changes to the content. We just moved around a few slides just in case anyone tuned in. We're going to talk a little bit about CalPERS in general, how it works, talk a little bit about the history of historical costs and projected cost trends based on what we know from CalPERS. I'll probably stop there and open it up for questions, and then we'll get into more of the quantitative subject matter, which is how the city can leverage the 115 trust assets moving forward to help mitigate rising pension costs. So the city of Walnut Creek currently has a $155 million unfunded accrued liability with CalPERS. This is a debt that you have with CalPERS, and we'll define what an unfunded accrued liability is in a couple of slides. It's pretty evenly split between the safety police plan, which is $73 million, and the miscellaneous plan, which covers non-safety employees, which currently stands at $82 million. The city has been extremely proactive in setting aside funds over the last 8 years, primarily in 2018 and 19, contributing close to $19 million into the trust. Combined with investment earnings since then, that trust currently sits at about $29 million and is going to be a very helpful asset moving forward to mitigate some of the cost increases we're going to look at. City also has a $2 million internally held reserve as well. So just a few slides on CalPERS basics. The city makes two types of payments each year to CalPERS. The first is the normal cost. And the normal cost is the amount needed to fund future retirement benefits based on various calculations. So they're meant to keep up with current employees. There's lots of calculations that go into it, future investment return expectations, mortality rates, inflation rates. Employee contributions fund part of it, and the city kicks in the rest. And so all of that goes into what's called a normal cost calculation. And in a perfect world, if CalPERS were to meet all of their expectations, that's all you would pay. The challenge is that over the last couple of decades, those expectations haven't been met. And what develops is the second component of what you pay to CalPERS each year, which is known as the unfunded accrued liability, or the UAL. And the UAL is statewide the largest debt on nearly every city's books in terms of debt. And defining the UAL, I think the graphic on the right side is very helpful. It's the difference between what the city would need to have in assets to be 100% funded, which is shown in that navy blue bar, that's $521 million, versus what you actually have in assets, which is $367 million. So that difference there, that shortfall, is the unfunded accrued liability. Based on investment returns through last fiscal year, that stands at $155 million. It's a large number. CalPERS doesn't require you to pay that back all at once, so similar to any sort of mortgage, loan, they amortize that over 20 years. And we'll get into what that repayment shape looks like, because that's one of the very unique aspects of the UAL. It's not like a 30-year mortgage where you pay the same number every year, which makes budgeting quite easy. It's actually an aggregation of 30 to 40 different layers, little mortgages, all at different terms. And when you add them all together, you're going to see that there's a huge bottleneck, a big increase in payments over the next 10 years. We'll refer to that as the mountain peak in payments before things start to drop off after that. On the bottom left there is a calculation of the plan's funded ratio, 70.3%, very much in line with most agencies statewide. So just to define a couple key terms that will be used in the presentation tonight, number one is the discount rate. And you could think of the discount rate in two different ways. The first being it's CalPERS' assumed rate of return. So it's what they expect to earn on their investments over the next 20, 30 years. It's also, when you think of that UAL debt that you have with them, that $155 million, that's what they're charging you in interest on that debt, because they expect they can take that money and go earn that in the market. The asset liability management, this is a study that happens every 4 years. It's when they reassess all of their different plan assumptions, so investment returns, demographic data, and they make changes. And those changes will impact the UAL within the next year or two. So it's a direct impact to the budget. The reason we bring it up right now is because that study is in progress, and we will get the results of that later this summer, this fall. So one takeaway from a lot of this this project, you can say, is that the CalPERS challenge isn't going away. The city, as we'll get into, has a lot of money saved that is going to help put you in a better position, but reassessing this every year, at least once a year, is helpful, just given that things are always changing with assumptions. So why are we even talking about UALs? Because they were essentially non-existent in the early 2000s. That's because stock market was earning double-digit returns. Most plans were overfunded at that time, meaning there was too much money in the accounts. And this is about the time when a lot of the benefit packages were being put together. Over the last 20 years, we've seen sluggish investment returns. So if you look at the top right of the slide, that shows the 5, 10, 20, and 30-year averages for CalPERS returns. you can see that the 5, 10, and 20 are all between 6 and 7%. Sounds relatively healthy, but when CalPERS was assuming 8.25% in the early 2000s, that's a big difference. So that's one big factor, is that their investment returns aren't meeting their goals. And then on the bottom right there, we note that they're changing their assumptions as well. So that discount rate that I defined earlier, that's moved down on 4 or 5 different occasions over the last 20 years, down from 8.25. It's currently at 6.8%. So every time they ratchet down what they think they can earn in the market, it means they're expecting less in investment earnings, meaning that the city has to kick in more and that UAL debt goes up higher. Other assumptions that have been changing that are driving costs higher are inflation as well as mortality rates. And then lastly there, I think important to note that from a budgetary perspective, about 6 or 7 years ago, it also got more challenging for public agencies because CalPERS used to amortize the UAL over 30 years, meaning that the annual payment was lower. Now they force it over 20 years, so it's a higher payment. Think of just like a mortgage. If you have a shorter term, your payments, you're going to pay less in interest over time, but it means that the budget impact is larger in the near term. So this chart is the CalPERS returns over the last 20 years or so, really meant to show how volatile these returns are. You can see that the worst year they had was in 09, negative 23.6%. They just had one of their best years ever a few years ago in fiscal year 21 at 21.3%. And just important to note that every year CalPERS looks at how they did relative to their target discount rate. If they didn't meet it, they increase your UAL, and then that UAL gets amortized. If they beat their mark, you actually get an offset to your debt. So when they have a good year, your UAL goes down, which is helpful. But I bring that up because you're at the whim a little bit of CalPERS returns. They don't force you to pay that change in the very next fiscal year. They do give you some time. So most of these impacts there's a 2-year lag, and then they get phased in over 5 years. So it's kind of a 7-year process for you to actually feel the full burden if CalPERS does have a year where they don't meet their mark. And as we'll see, the city's starting to face large increases from that down year from fiscal year 22, which was negative 6.1%, which doesn't sound that bad, but it's 14 percentage points off their target rate of return.
Can I just ask a question on that slide?
Yeah, I got one
trying
too.
to wrap my head around it. How is it that in 2021 it could be 21.3% return and then negative 6.1? Isn't it invested like we invest our monies kind of conservatively and something that's pretty stable?
You can equate it to a 401k plan, although CalPERS has one plan. Right now it's about 50-50 in terms of equity allocation, fixed income. They have some private equity, but I think if you look back at the stock market trends from 21, it was way up, and then in 22 there was a crash. You also had inflation kicking in, bond, fixed income didn't do as well. So I don't think this is out of the ordinary if you look across, various types of investment funds during that time period.
And so even though we're up in 24, they're up in 24, not quite there in 23, you said we're still recovering from 22.
You're going to start because of the 2-year lag, and then they start to phase in the impact. So the poor year that they had in 22 is just now hitting your actuarial reports, and then you're going to start to see the increases in your bill to CalPERS each year starting next fiscal year, and then those will ramp up over 5 years. But you're right, in 24 they beat their mark, and we're going to get to a slide to show what that does to the UAL because it did come down, and that benefit you'll start to see that benefit in about 3 to 4 years.
I could go deeper, but just one more question on, isn't the 21.3, wouldn't that have offset the 6.1 and give us a cushion going forward for 3, 4, 5 years? How come that's not the case?
Yeah, and I don't mean to skip ahead, but I think this chart right here, if you look at the bottom, those CalPERS returns are very similar to what you just saw. They're slightly different, and I don't want to get into why, but that 21 year is where they earned 22% returns. And you can see that gray bar, that's your UAL. It dropped from 138 million in 2020 down to 102 million just in 1 year from their good returns. But then you see that it bounced back up to 159 million the next year because they lost negative 7.5. So that's kind of the yo-yo effect of CalPERS returns and the impact on the UAL debt.
And I have a question about the discount rate. You were saying that as the discount rate goes down, we're getting less return on the money that's been put aside, so the UAL goes up. But we're also calculating our payments based on an interest rate. That's the discount rate, and when that's lower, that also would drop your payment. What's that relationship like?
Yeah, great question. So you're right, it's a lower interest rate, so you would think it's a lower payment, but because of essentially what's happening is the accrued liability is going up a lot more. So all these packages are defined benefits, so all the benefits are guaranteed, but the fact that CalPERS is assuming less is coming from interest over time, you need a lot more to get there. And so that gap just widens and that UAL calculation goes up. And we're going to get to a slide that shows the sensitivity to those changes because, you know, this year they're looking at those assumptions. 4 years ago, they were talking about moving all the way down to 6.5 from 7. They only went to 6.8. If they go to 6.5 from 6.8, that's a immediate increase of $20 million for the city of Walnut Creek. So from 155 million to 175 million. So
And why don't we keep going through the presentation? Because I know, having seen this in finance, a lot of these questions we'll get to the answers.
So this is a graphic that I think is helpful too. It's pulled from the CalPERS website, and it just shows how CalPERS benefits get funded. And on the left side shows the CalPERS investment earnings, showing about 55% of benefits being funded from investment earnings. The city or the employer picking up about a third, and then CalPERS members, city employees paying about 11 cents on the dollar. And I think the interesting thing to note that we have in some of the bullets on the left is that if you looked at this chart 15 years ago before the Great Recession, 70% was coming from investment earnings, meaning that cities, CalPERS participants, were only paying 20% or 20 cents on the dollar. So that's anytime CalPERS, as investment earnings go down and it makes up a smaller share of this dollar, it means that CalPERS employers, City of Walnut Creek, has to kick in the difference. And we're going to start getting to direct impacts on the budget because right now we're talking very high level, but we'll start to see how this works into the actual numbers you will be seeing over the next decade, 20 years. The city does have 2 plans. I think I mentioned that before, a safety police plan as well as a miscellaneous plan. There's a little over 1,600 covered members. About a quarter of those are active employees. There has been new legislation that was enacted in 2013 that anyone hired after that date, they're part of these PEPRA benefit packages. So they're slightly lower benefit levels, also cheaper for cities as well. So I think in the long term, hopefully we won't be in this situation 20 years down the road. But it's important to note, as we bolded in the bottom bullet there, that the UAL is almost 100% attributable to the classic plan. So it's not the PEPRA plans are going to be helpful, hopefully long term, to be more sustainable. But this $155 million unfunded liability is a output of things that have happened over the last 20 years, and they're attributable to the classic plans.
Mike, if we could, I just want to add something, if you could just go back one slide. I just did want to highlight something, and you may want to speak to this in a little more detail, just a point that's worth noting. There's been a lot of discussion about the different pension plans. There was a lot of focus on the public safety pension plans, and that cost is really highlighted here. If you look at the miscellaneous, so that's all non-public safety, is about 82 million. Roughly half, at 73 million is safety. It's about 1/5 of the employees equate to about half of the cost. So it just gives you a sense of the magnitude of the cost difference between the more expensive public safety retirement plans compared to the lesser benefit for the miscellaneous employees.
That's a helpful point. I think that point, you could also translate that into percentage of payroll, where the miscellaneous plans, I think it's 10% about for the city, 10% for the employee. Safety plans are more like 30% of payroll that the city's kicking in versus 10% for the employee. So higher cost plans for the safety. Quick slide here just showing the transition from Classic to PEPRA. I think a couple things to highlight. This fiscal year 25, you can see that you're already over half of the employees are covered by the PEPRA plans. And as folks from the Classic plans retire, then there will be it'll be close to 100% over the next 10 years in terms of the number of employees that will be covered under the PEPRA plans. This is a slide that we just went through, but shows the UAL fluctuations over the last 8 years, as well as the funded ratio. So I think that the big takeaway from this slide is that it is a directly tied to CalPERS returns. Other assumption changes as well, but you can see that anytime CalPERS has a good year, you'll see a reduction in the UAL, and when they have a down year, you'll see an increase in the UAL. And of course, the funded ratio is tracking that as well. You'll see in 2024, those reports aren't out yet, but CalPERS does have a good, transparent model on their website where you can model things out. So we do have a pretty good estimate there based on them beating their mark last year. They earned 9.3%. And that funded ratio there, just to note, of 75.9%, does include the assets that the city does have in the 115 trust.
Just sorry, I don't know that you'll answer this one or not, but just on that, try not to be too esoteric in the question, but how do you plan when these numbers are all over the place? Like, last year was 155, and the year before was 164, and 2021 it was 102, and Caltrans has some sort of model on there, but I don't think they really know either. Well, maybe they do, but CalPERS, how do you make sense of these numbers and go, that's the number that we should, our UAL is 155, we can bank on that, and that's what we should be planning for?
It's why you plan for potentially more pessimistic scenarios. CalPERS not meeting their mark. We're going to get into some analysis that assumes that there's changes made to some of their assumptions. It isn't a direct one-to-one. They have a bad year, and all of a sudden your payments double the very next year. That's why I talked about there's a 2-year lag. There's a 5-year phase-in. So when you start to factor in good and bad years, it's not as impactful. It's not as extreme to the budget. But as we'll get into in a couple of slides, you'll see that the way the UAL is amortized, there's a large bottleneck over the next 10 years or so in terms of budget payments. So that's what we're going to get to, and that's really what the city's trying to navigate. And in some ways,
Not
you're in
year-to-year fluctuations, but this bottleneck that's coming over the next
yeah, what's going to hit your budget, what you're paying annually on these numbers, because it's a big movement. 50 million's a big movement, but then when you stretch that payment out over 20 years and then you layer it on to all the other debt that you're already paying, it's not it's a little more manageable. But to your point, all agencies right now are getting to the point where they're climbing up this mountain peak in payments. You've been climbing, and it's going to just keep getting higher for the next 6-7 years, and that's already baked in. Those are from things that have already happened. As we'll get to, the nice thing is, relative to other agencies, you're in a good position with the 115 trust, which is what we'll get into, because you can use some of those assets to mitigate a lot of this volatility that we're going to look at. Just a quick comparison to some neighbors. the low 70% range is, I think, statewide. You're in line with most agencies. It's hard to compare every agency apples to apples, special districts to cities with, without fire, without police, things like that. But this is just to show that the city is in line with statewide averages. So this is the chart I think that's going to be most eye-opening when it comes to the budget impact. And two colors here. The bottom color in orange is the normal cost. This grows in a more linear fashion, mostly tied to payroll growth. Obviously, a lot of other assumptions go into that, but you're not going to see kind of the ups and downs on the normal cost that you do on the UAL. The UAL in blue, so this is, as I mentioned earlier, a combination of 30 to 40 different layers of the debt. So you can think of that $155 million broken up into all these different loans. These different loans have different remaining terms on them. Some are 7 years, some are 10, some are 13. The bulk of them are kind of in that middle period, which is why you see this mountain peak in payments. So, the big takeaway from a budget perspective, if you look at 2018, the city's paying a little under $10 million. Next fiscal year, you're close to $20 million, and the bulk of that is in the light blue. It's the UAL, which is essentially doubled over that time period, and then it's projected to get closer to that $23 million level by 2030, 2031. And then you start to see a lot of these layers being paid off, and you start to see those payments drop, and then you don't see really anything after 20 years. Should note that this is a snapshot in time. So every year they're going to add or subtract a layer. So this kind of mountain peak is going to shift up and down each year, and it's going to get pushed out based on CalPERS returns, based on different assumption changes. But for the next 5, 6, 7 years, this is what the city should be planning for. And as we'll get into, planning for probably even some more pessimistic scenarios as well. So before we get to the cost management strategy and kind of the analysis behind using the 115 Trust to deal with this mountain peak, are there any other questions in this background section?
The decision to amortize over 20 years versus 30 years, that was a state legislative move, I assume, or who did that?
It was CalPERS, and
Okay.
essentially their funded ratio was too low. I mean, at some point you got to have money to pay retirees, and they said we need to be repaid faster on this debt. So 30 years, I haven't seen it done. There's some agencies who can talk to CalPERS about that if they're in a financial hardship, but for the most part, everyone's on the new 20-year amortization.
And just to add to that, if I may, and feel free to jump in, Mike, if my memory is not correct. After the Great Recession, CalPERS was flirting in the low 60s in terms of funded ratio. And if a pension falls below 60%, it falls into what's called the death spiral, where it's effectively too costly to catch back up, and you just can't do it. And so CalPERS really was in a state of emergency in terms of what to do and to fund, and they needed to shore up, and as you can see, costs have gone up dramatically. I mean, the Great Recession during that time frame with the losses that were incurred and all the pension enhancements that had occurred in the late 90s and early 2000s all came together and resulted in what we're looking at. So they made numerous changes to their approach in order to shore up the pension and get it up back into the 70s. Overall, CalPERS, I think, is in the low to mid 70s with funded ratio, and which is obviously a much healthier position than the low 60s. So it's working, but there is a lot of work yet to be done.
And then one other question on this, just because this is something that when we were looking at it in legislative committee or in the finance committee, that the returns going forward, you're just assuming that they get their discount rate 6.8, and they're going to have 10% years, and they're going to have negative 10% years in there. So this is a snapshot in time based on an average.
Correct. It assumes they earn 6.8 every year. And, we've with staff, we've run some more analysis and sensitivity, but I think for this meeting, we wanted to keep it, we didn't want to go for 2 hours, but you're right, it's a snapshot. So they're gonna come out with stuff this fall that's gonna change this chart, and most likely there's more pressure that it's gonna be to the detriment of the city than helping the city, in terms of they're not gonna raise the discount rate and say, hey, we're
good.
We're good now. Inflation is a challenge. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Any other questions at this point? Matt's over here still scratching, but okay, let's go ahead. Keep going.
Yep. So just a handful more slides. In terms of cost management strategies that are popular ones that have been used by other agencies, and all these are being used by Walnut Creek. Number one, prepaying the UAL early in the fiscal year. This is a strategy that's been done. There's been enough cash to do that. You do get a nice discount. Negotiating and cost sharing with employees. Obviously, as I already mentioned, new employees are already governed by the lower cost PEPRA plans. And then really the primary vehicles for managing rising pension costs are using reserves and surplus to pay extra. So above and beyond the bill that you get from CalPERS each year. And that's something that the city's been doing through the use of the 115 trust. So I'll define what that trust is in the next slide. The other option is to just pay CalPERS directly in the form of what's called an ADP, or an additional discretionary payment. This would just directly reduce the UAL and reduce some of those amortization payments. You can also do that through the 115 trust at a later time. As you are aware from some of the forecasting discussions, there are some challenges ahead with projected deficits potentially. So as you'll see, the 115 trust offers a lot of flexibility in how you can use it. So I think it's a good strategy to keep going with based on our review. So a 115 trust, as you may know, it's a restricted account. Once the monies are put in there, they must be used for pension expenses. And I think there was a question earlier kind of trying to equate CalPERS portfolio to 401k and all that. The nice thing about the 115 trust option is you have more options in terms of what kind of portfolios you want to be in. Do you want to be in a higher equity, kind of riskier long-term portfolio, or a very conservative one? The city's currently in a moderate 50-50 one. It's managed by PARS. It's done quite well over the last 6 or 7 years. And then really the biggest benefit is the flexibility on how and when to use it. So you can use that at any time during a challenging budget year just to make your annual payments. You can use it to smooth that mountain peak in payments, which is what we're going to get into in some of the analysis. You could even just let it grow over time, and at some point it's going to be at the level of your UAL, and you could extinguish your UAL theoretically. So really just another shock absorber at the city's disposal to help manage this volatility going forward. As I mentioned, city's core objectives with the 115 trust: mitigating volatility, lowering that mountain peak in payments. So when I say lowering that mountain peak or smoothing that mountain peak, it's not that CalPERS is necessarily changing their bill to you. It's that as you get into those years where those payments are higher, you're using some of the 115 trust to cover what's above like a more level and affordable payment for the general fund. So really the idea is the charts will be a little bit more descriptive, but you have a trust that's $29 million that's going to continue earning interest, and you can use that strategically in those years of higher payments to help make that CalPERS bill. And that way, from a budgeting perspective, you're keeping the general fund at a less volatile level, not bobbing up and down each year. And then, of course, liquidity. A lot of our analysis does assume that the trust is depleted over a 13, 14-year period. 5, 6 years down the road, there may be reasons why there's minimum balances that should be kept probably, but for the purposes of this initial analysis where we're trying to see how big of a benefit is this trust heading into these challenging years, we did assume it gets fully depleted. So again, the city has close to 29 million of assets in the trust. Came from large contributions in 18 and 19, totaling close to 20 million. There's been a lot of investment earnings growth since then. And as Kirsten mentioned earlier, some of the key considerations is it time to stop growing the trust? And if so, when should the city start to pull out money? How much? And how would some of these other variables change those decisions? What if we head into a recession? What if there are discount rate changes? So those are the things that were driving this initial analysis. So we did build out a model that we will be, periodically working on with staff to update, and we ran 3 scenarios for the purpose of this this project. Number 1 being no changes at CalPERS, so just assuming they continue to meet all their different goals with their investments and no changes to assumptions. Number 2, which I think is timely because we do know they are talking about the discount rate right now, is that if they do lower their discount rate from 6.8 to 6.5, and in both of those, as you'll see from the graphics, we look at kind of smoothing that peak in payments. Whereas number 3 here, we took a more tailored approach to seeing how could those assets be used to solve the projected deficits that the city presented as part of their forecasting discussion. So slide 29, this is a graphic.
Can I ask a question about the last one, sir? About the trust?
Yeah.
The 115 trust, if that has a narrow purpose, which is it can only be used to pay for a pension, what's the advantage of putting the money in said trust versus just investing it on our own in a free market type of scenario?
Yeah, you're limited in your investment options with your current general fund reserves. You can't just go investing in the stock market.
Okay.
So once you put it into the 115 trust, it opens the door to more investment options.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I saw that we had, 2019, we got 6%. Last year, we got 10%. How do we expect our trust to perform in relationship to the discount rate? And if it would be higher than that, what would be the advantage of putting that money into of paying down the UAL with it?
Yeah, well, I wish I had a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Currently, in the vehicle that it's in now with PARS is in a 50-50 allocation, so very similar to CalPERS. We aren't investment advisors, but the city can work with PARS and its investment advisor based on, risk tolerance as well as projected withdrawals to figure out, do you want to go for more return and have 70% in equities, 30% fixed income, or do you want to be more conservative? Do you want to have maybe 2 portfolios? So that's a little bit out of our lane. If you look at the 115 trust providers versus CalPERS year to year, you're going to see some years that CalPERS beats them, other years, CalPERS maybe underperforms. So there's no, in some ways, to your first question, the big benefit is investment returns. You're able to access the market, which you can't do with your general fund reserves, and you're essentially tying that money up to be used for pension.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So this is the first status quo scenario. These blue bars are the same blue bars we looked at on the previous page of the UAL. And basically the orange dotted line under this scenario is what the general fund would be paying each year. So essentially trying to have a level payment for the general fund. And in this scenario, it's at $12.1 million. Anything above that orange dotted line assumes that you're withdrawing money from the trust and you're using a portion of that to make your CalPERS bill each year. And then after 2037, that money is, that trust is exhausted. And we looked at the 10-year historical returns for the current portfolio that the money's in. It was a 5.28%, so we thought that was a fair assumption to use for future investment earnings. Obviously, we could be more conservative, more aggressive. But this really, I think, this graphic is a good way to look at how you can use that trust to stabilize payments for the general fund. And if we move to scenario 2, essentially it's the same, a similar graphic, but things have moved up. So from the previous page where payments are spiking at around 16 million, this scenario again is if CalPERS changes their discount rate to 6.5 theoretically very possible this year. As I mentioned before, that would be a UAL increase of 20 million. So the UAL would go to 175 million. And now instead of those payments spiking at 16 million, it would now be 18 million. So that just gives you a sense of how impactful a change like that could be. The trust would still come in, it would still be very beneficial. It just means that you probably wouldn't want to dip into that trust next fiscal year. You'd want to push it out a year, wait till 2027. And those payments you could stabilize at around the $13.7 million level. So a lot of this analysis too, from our perspective was, when should the city be dipping into that trust, and are there reasons why you might want to push pause on that? And I think looking at what could happen as a result of the ALM study this year and knowing that it would push off, maybe the timing of when to prudently dip into the trust, it may be something that you reassess later this year once a lot of these assumptions are ironed out, because it would change the analysis.
Could you go back a minute and just toggle back and forth between scenario 1 and scenario 2 as to what's different? The discount rate went from 6.8 to 6.5. The CalPERS investment returns did the same thing, and the rest of the 4 other assumptions are the same?
Yeah, and this,
Yes.
I should, now as I scroll back and forth, we should have used the same $20 million horizon on the axis so you can see the step up in payments. But basically the blue bars jumped up to the $18 million level in this discount rate lowering scenario 2. So it's at 18, and if I go back a slide, they're at about 16 million. So that's a $2 million annual impact if they were to reduce the discount rate.
But the assumption is that we start with 28.7 million and we have a rate of return, an actual interest rate of return in our investment of 5.28%. So it's the same bucket of money.
It's the same bucket of
being
money.
spread differently to
It's just being
smooth.
spread upon a higher amount of
Okay,
debt.
great. Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out the math on this then too. So it increased by 20 million, you said, in scenario 2.
Mm-hmm.
So is more of that 2 million each year is coming from the general fund. It's not coming from the trust, because the trust hasn't gotten any bigger.
Pretty close to that, yeah, and that's why we're highlighting the orange dotted, which you could think about that as what you would budget from the general fund. So that's 13.7 million.
Up from 12.1.
Up from 12.1, so you're close, yeah, 1.5 million.
Okay.
Yep.
Times 12
In that,
or 11.
Yeah, so nothing's changing in the trust. We're assuming that just grows at 5.28%. No more contributions. It just means that, that trust doesn't provide as much benefit if things happen with CalPERS.
and scenario 1 and 2, it's really what happens on the CalPERS side, not what the city does.
Correct.
That really changes.
Correct. And so the third option, you won't see a chart like that because we kind of looked at it from a different perspective, because all of this is planning, right? We don't really know what's going to happen. You're not setting a plan in place on exactly how to use it, but part of our project was to figure out how meaningful and how much benefit this trust could provide at its current level. So our third scenario looked at the projected deficits over the next 10 years using the city staff's moderate recession financial forecast. You can see a lot of the deficits are larger in 27, 28, 29. The assumptions are listed to the right, and then a few years of surplus, and then some deficits in the back end. And really the summary is that the current level of 115 assets could absorb all of those deficits through 2034 and a little bit of 2035. I don't think as a financial advisor we're recommending that you depend solely on the 115 trust to solve all the budget deficits, but it gives you a good understanding of the magnitude of that trust and how helpful it could be for some of these projected benefits. And so this comparison, these 3 columns here are the projected withdrawals or the expected withdrawals under each of these scenarios. So, scenario 1 and 2, you can see those, it's a little bit more linear and they get a little bigger during those mountain peak years and then they start to come down. Whereas in the third option, if you use it for purely the deficit mitigation, more money's getting pulled out in those tough budget years. And this really goes back to what I mentioned before, which is the main benefit of the trust, which is flexibility on how to use it. You don't have to decide right now, we're going to use X million in this year, but you know that you have it. And I think this is leading into, the policy that staff's going to talk more about after this.
Can I
Wait.
ask a question?
Yeah.
So you're, when I look at option scenario 3, what you're really doing is burning through it.
Earlier, yes.
And a hybrid approach would be some burn, some structural budgetary changes.
That sounds like a hybrid approach to me.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, we weren't involved too much with the forecasting, but I know one of the drivers of some of the deficits is rising pension costs. So there is overlap there. Obviously, there's other sales tax assumptions being that are part of that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember DeFinney?
The deficit mitigation strategy is paying both the chopping off the top of the peak as well as covering our deficit, or just using it for deficit?
It's just using it for these deficits right here, which is why, so these deficits line up with the withdrawals from the trust.
But if you go back to the previous slide, we're seeing, I see these deficits here, okay.
Let me speak to that. It's different ways of applying. What we're trying to do is just share a few different scenarios to ultimately get to where we're headed as a policy for how to apply the trust. We're not picking a scenario. We're not saying anyone's going to be accurate. But a little different way of looking at this, it's how do you apply the money over this period of time. So in this scenario of using it to address the gaps, if you can go back one, Mike, to the mountain curve there, or a couple back. If I remember right, the scenarios 1 and 2 take us out to like 2037, addressing and getting us through this curve. Scenario 3 only got us to 2034 in addressing the mountaintop. So it's still addressing the mountaintop of UAL payment in a different way of applying the money, but it lasts for a shorter period of time. And if you look at this, one of the keys of what we're trying to get at is we want to start using if we're going to use the trust, we want to start using it at a point where we're addressing pension benefits that when we stop using it, the pension costs are the same or less as when we started using it. And we'll speak to that in the policy. Otherwise, we're going to be left holding the bag with a gap in our budget that was funded by the pension. So that's really what this is getting at, is chopping off that mountaintop so that the starting and the ending pension costs are roughly the same after we've used the trust. And we'll speak to that again as we go through the policy here in just a few moments.
I'd like to ask another question, but you can say, I'm getting to that. I'd like to see the next 2 years of what the growth in the UAL is versus how the moderate recession. In other words, what portion of the negative below the line?
So it's a little bit separate, I think, from the forecast for the UAL, where these are the numbers I believe that staff was using for the deficit forecast.
Are they anywhere close? I mean, for example, the moderate recession shows 3.1 million underwater in 26 and 6.8 million in 27. I'm wondering what the growth in the UAL is for the same 2 years versus 25.
So the UAL payment for fiscal year 26 is just over 13 million. And for 27, it goes up to 14.2 million. So it is growing from 26 to 27.
But it's less than, so there's more involved in our budgetary problem than just rising pension costs.
Correct.
Well, I just wanted to make sure I was tracking this.
All right, and we've got a lot to get. Why don't we go back to raising our hands if you have a question, and let's see if we can get through the presentation, and then we can kind of dig into everything, okay?
So now I'm going to talk about some key takeaways from the information that we have heard this evening. And so the first one is really that the trust is intended to be used. So when it was established, it was decided by your council that it wouldn't be used before 2023, but the intent was always to use it to offset or help mitigate the rising pension costs. Pension costs are projected to increase through 2033, with a decrease beginning in 2034. The city's trust and reserve balances can be leveraged over the next 10 to 12 years. And finally, staff is recommending adopting a policy for the use of the pension resources in order to have a clear framework to ensure that the resources are used effectively and the city is balancing short-term budget relief with long-term financial sustainability. And so just wanted to go through some of the key provisions in the policy. The first being only using the pension resources during deficit years to maintain service levels, so not to expand services. And withdrawals would be based on actual financial needs. So what would happen is we would look at the year-end results and determine how much we would need from the trust, if any, or we would use the amount budgeted, whichever is less. As I mentioned earlier, balancing the use of resources with other reserves in times of economic challenge. Avoid relying on one-time funds for ongoing expenses while also being mindful of the concept of using these resources over a period of time until our pension costs begin to decline systemically. General fund surpluses may be deposited into the trust at year end where appropriate, so this could allow the city to continue to grow or reinvest in that trust. Continue prepaying pension liabilities when feasible to achieve the cost savings. The cost savings is typically 50% of the discount rate, so right now it's around 3.3, 3.4% of our annual UAL payment. So for example, in fiscal year 25, by prepaying, we saved approximately $440,000. Take steps to ensure that the pension resources last until at least fiscal year 2034, when those pension costs are projected to decline based on what we know today, and ideally making sure the trust will last those 10 years. So the city really is using those funds as a bridge to get through that mountain peak of those rising costs. So again, what we're asking of you today is to provide feedback and accept the report and adopt a resolution establishing the pension trust and reserve use policy.
All right.
And so we are
Thank you.
available for any additional questions.
Questions? Do all of you have questions? Okay, we're going to start with DeFinney, Councilmember DeFinney.
The prepaying is, I guess, paying at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Correct, in July.
And you said it drops the discount rate in half.
Well, the amount of savings that we achieve that they provide us for prepaying is half of the discount rate. That's how they determine how much we can save for that 1 year. So it's really, because we're paying them up front, they have the advantage of being able to invest that money longer.
Yes, that's sort of where my question was going. So if we pay up front and we take the money out of the trust, we've also lost our own interest in the trust. Is that still a $450,000 savings? Am I understanding this correctly?
Well, the UAL we would pay out of the general fund. And so we would budget for that amount to pay out of the general fund. We would take advantage of the discount so that we would be paying less. However, we wouldn't utilize the trust until year end when we determined, based on our actual revenue and expenditures, whether or not we needed additional funds to close the gap if we had more expenditures than revenues. Okay. So we would leave those resources in the trust to continue earning interest throughout the year.
Thank you very much for the presentation. When we established the pension trust in 2018, it was with the understanding, and Dan, you may remember on this as well, so the understanding that as needed, we would be using the pension trust after the 5 years had gone past for this exact scenario. I mean, obviously we didn't know what the exact scenario was going to be, but to reduce the budget impacts that would otherwise be experienced from general operating procedures. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to expound upon that, when the trust was established in fiscal year 2018, at the time, the direction from council, we started to debate this very issue about how to apply the trust, and frankly, it was fairly complicated, and we knew we didn't want to use it for a while. So the direction from council was to continue to invest and not to use the trust until at least fiscal year 23. 5 years later. So we're heading into fiscal year 26, 3 years after that minimum date, with the expectation that we would start to use it. And that is one thing, that this trust is very different than some of our other reserves, such as our fiscal reserve, our emergency reserve. Those we hope to never use, because it means there's some type of emergency. We used some during COVID as an example. If there was some other type of disaster, we may have to use those. This trust was always intended to be used in order to address this growing pension debt, and to do so in a very methodical manner, which is what we're obviously trying to discuss today.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Silva?
Can you go back to the chart that has the 6 policy provisions? So the first one, I think, is probably one of the most critical, because it says only use it during deficit years to maintain service levels. And this is, Mr. Buckshire, this is where the phrase that I feel needs to be reiterated is missing. I finally found it again. What we're really saying, I believe, is use the pension during deficit years to offset pension costs that would otherwise reduce the level of service, greatly reduce the level of services.
The existing levels, yes, correct.
Okay. So in all cases, we're using it to offset the pension costs, not to actually maintain programming.
That's correct.
That's
yes.
paid for by the general fund. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if I may, I mean, the trust is legally restricted to use to pay for pension costs.
But, you know, maybe we can slow down the argument from the public who doesn't understand the provisions of the pension trust.
I appreciate that, and I get that too. I guess the scenario 3 then is kind of a false choice, because it's not, you can't really use it for anything but addressing the pension liability.
Correct, but if you were to play that out, the pension liability is much greater than any of those deficits in any year. So it would be applied to pension in theory. But again, we're not recommending scenario 3. We used it as one of 3 scenarios just to outline different considerations to get to the policy. But we're paying nearly $20 million a year in pension costs. So in theory, we could use up to $20 million a year of the trust and still be applying it legally. Again, not recommending that, but to.
And then the problem would still exist.
Correct. Again, not recommending it.
And then another question had to do with, and I appreciate your presentation, which was very thorough. But are we missing a piece of this in terms of the investment advice? That before we come up with the policy, have we gotten the feedback from our? Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's thoroughly vetted. In fact, we include it in the quarterly investment earnings update to council. We probably have one coming up, and you may want to speak to that in a little more detail in terms of our investment mix and what we'd be doing going forward.
Yeah, so
Greg, let's let Matt finish his questions.
Oh.
So did the investment advice, it factored into this policy, and if so, if you could just kind of elaborate on that.
So we're actually working with our investment advisors for the pension trust. So they're aware that we're bringing this forward, and they're aware of the information. And so we're working with them to determine what the investment strategy should be for the trust, based on whatever is decided in terms of the policy and how we're going to use it. And so they would look at, do we need to move some of the trust investments into more stable or more lower interest rates with less risk, knowing that we're going to be withdrawing from it.
Was there a thought that they should be engaged in terms of developing the policy, though? Because it kind of seems like cart before the horse.
Really what their focus is the investment and how to get the most investment return right now, and then adjusting based on whether or not we're going to start using the trust. So that's mostly what they're focused on, but we will provide them with all of the information that we brought forward, and that's going to help inform the decisions in terms of whether we make changes to it going forward.
Okay.
You know, you could almost think of it as, if you think about it as, say, a target mutual fund, you know, where the target is a retirement in, I don't know, pick a year, 2040 or something. You know, as you get closer to that date, the investments become more conservative because you're likely to use those funds. And so we have been having ongoing discussions, but what the investment advisors need to know is what's your intention in terms of using the fund. If they were to say you're not going to use it for another 10, 15 years, it would be a much more aggressive strategy. if they're anticipating that we're going to use it here in the near term and intend to effectively use it over the next 10 to 12 years, which is more or less being recommended, then over time they're going to move to a more conservative investment portfolio.
And I know this presentation has demonstrated to me that things are fluid in this area. What were our projections or estimates?
The word is liquid.
Liquid. With the pension trust fund, has it reached the amount that we thought it would? Is that what has it exceeded our expectations? Is it?
I would say it's exceeded our expectations by quite a bit. We initially invested $19.9 million in the trust, and so now we have close to just over $28 million. So it's done quite well in the last 5 years.
And the one chart that Mike showed with the percentages where we compare with other cities, we were higher, which was a good thing, which meant we were more funded.
Correct.
Than they are. And how are other cities dealing with this? Are they also doing the pension trust fund, or?
So, and Mike can probably speak to that more than I can, but my understanding is we are actually ahead of a lot of most cities in terms of how much we have in our pension trust and the fact that we even have the pension trust out there. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, don't know what every city and public agency is doing. We've worked with probably 100, 125 CalPERS members, and I would say the 115 Trust, ADPs, there was about 100 agencies that did pension bonds in 21 and 22, which that's it's apples and oranges because they did fund their accounts closer to 100%, but now they also have debt, so it's kind of a separate conversation. But I will say that for most, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus in terms of other cities, but I'd say for the most part, agencies are their policies are centered around how can we get things funded in a trust right now because they're staring at the same peak. You're in a position, this is probably one of our first or second times where we're working with the client that feasibly you could start withdrawing money. You've socked away a lot, and that's not the case for most agencies. They're looking for ways to actually start a trust now, to fund, to put more money into the trust because that, you can see that the dent you're making in that peak is big. It's a big, and if you don't have money in there, you can't really chop off that mountain peak. So I would say the city's in a good position, but you're not, you're still facing the same challenge that, that others are.
Just last question then. There's no advantage to just putting it all in at once, paying it, because it doesn't deal with the budget shortfalls.
It just grows.
Yeah, I mean, that, if CalPERS, I'm trying to get to, you can, when you give them an ADP, you can select which layers of those blue bars you exterminate. You basically take away those layers. You reduce, let's say you give them $30 million, your UAL drops from $155 million to $125, and you're going to see all the payments associated with that $30 million go away. So you're not going to be able to, level out the peak, but you can really ratchet it down. The challenge is that you're not, one is you don't have that rainy day fund anymore, which is right now you get to pick and choose when you use the trust. So once you send that money to CalPERS, you can never claw it back. And it doesn't mean that UAL is not going to come right back. So no matter, you're extinguishing that in a snapshot in time, but then each year moving forward, you're still going to be at the whim of CalPERS. So there is benefit. I wasn't saying the ADP, and that's something I think as time goes on.
What is the ADP again?
The additional payment to CalPERS where they say, you've given me $30 million, we'll give you credit for that, and we'll take away the interest payments at 6.8%. So there is benefit, but now you're left with no rainy day fund and shock absorber to deal with the unknowns moving forward. So.
If I may just add to that, your question's spot on. So that very dynamic is why Pension 115 Trust came about maybe 10 years ago, give or take, because previously organizations, cities, counties, districts, and so forth were doing just that. They had some extra budget money. They said, let's give it to CalPERS to pay down the liability, just as you noted. And then lo and behold, CalPERS has a poor investment year, and that money bounces around and is down and the payments are back to where they were. Didn't seem like a good use of money. So the idea of the 115 Trust really gained fashion of still put the money aside to help pay for it, but the city controls it and controls how it's used, as opposed to giving that control to CalPERS and not knowing how it's going to ultimately play out.
Let me ask my questions first, and then we'll see if we, thanks. So go back to the one where it has what our pension policy draft is. There we go. So, and I'm looking at this and I'm seeing it as saying a couple key things. One is we're going to keep the control within ourselves, what we do with our pension trust. We are going to look on an annual basis and say, is this a year where we are able to cover our existing service obligations with our existing budget? And it's a really good year, lots of sales tax. So we're okay this year, so we're not going to use our pension reserve this year. And then we get to a poor year and we say, well, this is a year where we want to maintain our service level, and so we are going to use our pension trust only in those years, rather than just a set it and forget it. So it's kind of an adaptive management of the pension trust based on what's going on.
Correct, yes. And as Councilmember Silva mentioned earlier, the intent would be sort of a hybrid approach, because we wouldn't want to necessarily say every time we have a deficit, the pension trust will cover the full deficit by offsetting those pension costs. And so it really would be an analysis each time to determine what we would do in terms of, do we need to take reductions in addition to using some of the pension trust? So it would be very thought out as what our approach would be.
And one of the other things that we do in here is we don't, at the beginning of the year, we say we're anticipating we're going to use, say, $3 million of our pension reserve this year. We don't actually do that until the end of the year when we're closing the books, because sometimes we end up with unallocated fund balances at the end of the year. And if we said we were going to use $3 million, but we end up with an unallocated fund balance of $800,000, we only put $2.2 million out of the pension reserve into the paying for that.
Correct. We wouldn't want to create an additional surplus by using that pension trust to offset the pension cost. And so it would be very intentional to look at the actual revenues and actual expenditures, because as you know, when we bring forward our quarterly reports and our year-end report, we do sometimes have that surplus. And because we have salary savings or O&M savings, excuse me, and sometimes we have additional revenues that we don't anticipate as well.
Yeah. And so what we're doing here is we're just saying we're going to manage this adaptively. We are planning on starting to use it, but our decision each year will be based on the circumstances of that year, and we'll be guided by the idea that we want this to last through the hump and not all shoot our wad all in the first couple of years.
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Additional questions? Cindy?
So a technical question about that last point. We still have to adopt a balanced budget, so we would have to show that we're using it. We just don't go and do it until the very end.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to, we don't sit around waiting and adopt a fake budget that, doesn't show the gap.
Correct.
Okay, so we show the gap.
Yes, the intent would be at the time of budget adoption that we would need that.
It would
those
be
funds
clear what
unless
we're
something
using.
changes.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have additional questions? Go ahead.
I had a different question, but now I have another one. So are we making that decision today as to where, like, the different scenarios, or is this, where are we trying to get to at the end?
We're trying to come up with general policy provisions that they can then use with the investment advisors and use in their budgeting process. And
Which would then come back to Finance Committee, which would then come back to City Council.
Yeah. And more specifically, what we're asking is Exhibit A in the staff report, that you adopt that via the resolution. And to Mayor Pro Tem Wilk's point, that the actual dollar amount would be reviewed with Finance Committee, would be reviewed with Council, and it would be pursuant to the policy.
does that answer your questions, Councilmember DeFinney? Mayor Pro Tem?
No more questions?
Folks to my left? No, I'm just getting through our questions. And now it's time for public comment. Anyone? Anyone? Seeing nobody. I'll bring it back up here for discussion. Who wants to go first?
I didn't have a lot of questions because we asked the questions when we were at the Finance Committee, and I appreciate all the work that you've put into this. I remember when we talked about this at City Council, and this was the exact scenario we were looking at. We were hoping that we were going to be having no deficit or potential deficits on the budget for a few more years, but this is the time to do it, especially when the residents want to make sure that we continue to operate the city as we currently have. And so the fact that we've got this pension reserve and made the prudent decision when we had $13 million in one-time uses and literally saved it away for that rainy day rather than put it toward the pool fund, for example, or put it toward other things we wanted to do, it was because of this. And it was prudent, and so I support the recommendation.
I'll go ahead and, as the second Finance Committee member, I look at this, you guys have done a tremendous amount of work helping us see the coming challenge. And then coming up with these policies, I think of this as like our one-time money goes for one-time uses. These are guiding principles that our council and future councils will use on an annual basis to meet the objective of shaving the top off the mountain and making sure that we keep looking ahead at the mountain, because the mountain could grow, the mountain could shrink, but making sure we keep looking ahead at the mountain, making sure we're still making prudent decisions that continue to use the fund in a way that helps us maintain the services that people expect, but not use it in ways that increase expenditures on things above and beyond the baseline, and not use it as a way to allow people to spend a lot of money on other things in good years. They wanted, we need to continue to use our fiscal discipline that the city is known for as a way to use this money as effectively over a period of time, but give direction to staff that we do intend to use the money. And so I'm supportive of these policies.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for making CalPERS seemingly understandable. Of course, once we go through that door, it'll all go out my... I support the policy. I particularly support if we remember that this is not to ensure that there are no general fund cuts. This is to ensure that we can reduce the pain during deficit years by absorbing the truly rising UAL costs or pension costs, absorb it with these funds, which they were intended for. I really want to think this has been come about for 10, 12, 15 years, this conversation of how are we going to manage this, because you could see it coming. You could see it coming particularly after the 2009 recession, and I just want to say Mountain House, because CalPERS was invested in property, and they were empty homes, and the mortgage industry, that's what part of that negative number is, as I recall. I also want to compliment our predecessors, because many of the communities that you were comparing not only are sitting with these retirement problems, but also retiree health that has a same or bigger problem of funding gaps. And so they're significantly in challenging times. So thank you. Thank you for the work. And hopefully we will be able to provide this as guidance to looking forward to seeing what the budget recommendations are.
I agree. I don't have a lot more to add. I'm appreciative of my predecessors. I think two of them were on the council that made the decision to fund the pension trust. Still stuck a little bit on maintaining the service levels, but I'll let it go. I know it can only be used for pension liabilities. Obviously, we're going to be facing some other hard budget decisions, it looks like, in the next 5 to 10 years. I guess the only other point of caution I would make, and given how fluid everything's been in this area, is maybe we don't want to get too far ahead of the curve on this, because who knows, if all the cities in the state are dealing with it and they don't have a pension trust fund, one would think there may be some changes, like a switch back to 30 years or some other legislative fix that we're not thinking about, that I'm not sure we want to be the A student on this. We already are, because we have the pension trust fund. But maybe if that can just factor into our real-world application of it, and I know that we will. We'll be watching kind of what the state's doing on this and making sure that we're in sync with kind of those changes in policy.
We get to look at it every year.
Councilmember DeFinney?
I'd like to echo Councilmember Francois' comments about thanking our predecessors for putting the money aside, and also I think that's a good point, that if all these cities are yet to, if they're not prepared for this, then there may be legislation down the road that makes this a little easier on us. So, not jumping right out to start the curve as soon as possible, but maybe holding off for as long as we can balance the budget. But thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anybody want to make a motion? We need
I'll-
to adopt it and adopt the resolution.
Well, as member of the Finance Committee, I move to accept the report and adopt the resolution establishing the pension trust and reserve use policy as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
And Mayor Darling.
Aye. And thank you guys so much. This is a tremendous amount of work here.
Thank you.
And I think with that, we are adjourned.